Do 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 do.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right, all right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there for our monthly roundtable, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. Actually, correction on Rockfin. Quick announcement here. It was brought to my attention that apparently Rockfin is not allowing people to participate in the chat anymore. And apparently, I guess, something with subscriptions as well. So it seems as though Rockfin is phasing itself out. I don't know. There's been a lot of things happening over there. So we are on YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. So welcome back, guys. We have a lot to dive into tonight. Scott Ritter is going to join us later in the show to talk about the recent updates with Maduro and Venezuela. For those who are not aware, he had his hearing. So please answer that poll question, whether or not you think that Maduro is going to walk, if he's going to make a deal, if he's going to jail, or if you're just not sure. We have new information about that as well. Tonight's theme is playing in our face, and I think they are with these stories. Let's go ahead and start out by giving shout outs to people in the chat. Hey, answer that poll if you can. Shout out to Ronnie says, I'm not sure yet, really. I hit he'll walk but make a deal, but I really don't know. One thing I do know, Trump needs to go. Thank you, Ronnie. Shout out to Ophelia says, hi, Sabby. Burkina Faso and Mali's ban on U.S. citizen entrance should be the model repeated by all countries banned by Trump. Interesting. We're going to get into Burkina Faso tonight because something happened that I really miss. Shout out to George Washington. We appeal to good souls of the American society, victims of its own leaders, to join our call for peace, Let us be all one people against warmongering and war. Nicolas Maduro, shout out the lies. Greetings, Blockbuster says hi. What's up, Fafo says hello, Sabby. All I'ma say is true. The pictures online of Trump nuzzling buckets of oil. Greetings, Robbie. Estar Con Madero, no Trump, El Pedofilio. Thank you. What's going on? Who alive, unalived Roger Rabbit? Just telling you straight up, I do not trust this Ritter. Plus, he doesn't have a good rep. Man was lying when Syrians were being unalived left and right. Well, Scott and I had a back and forth about that on this channel before. So just FYI. What's going on? Cloudness says, Ayo, so what's poppin', fam? Salute Sabby Sabs and everyone in the chat. B1, let's go. Greetings, Crazy Cat says, might be hopium, but I think Maduro will walk. I'm hearing a lot of people say that, though. I've talked to people about this earlier today. Bill, what's up, says the case has no foundation. It's all lies and BS, but I can't be surprised if the worst happens because America is a shithole country. They will attempt every dirty, low down option. Shout out to Chuck says, will Maduro be Epsteined? Oof. Greeting Silver Surfer says, peace and love, Sabrina. Shout out to Randy says, it's rainy and bleak from winter evening here in upstate New York, Sabby, and my revolutionary comrades. It's not raining here, but we're supposed to get a wintry mix later on tonight. Greetings, Hannah says, Sab. Shout out to Mark says, Sabby. Greetings, Mr. Moto says, leverage. Let's say the prosecutor offers Maduro a deal. Plead guilty to X and we'll set your wife free. Yeah, there's a number of things that could happen. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm curious to hear what Scott is going to say about that as well when he joins. So again, tonight's theme is playing in our face, ladies and gents. Let's go ahead and shout out everyone who is a Sabby patron. All right. Shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators, there's Sabsters. Let's not forget about the Sabbies. What's going on, Sabbies? Hello. And we also have a group called Members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker throughout the show. And here we go. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for your support. Okay. We actually have a bonus story tonight, too, because some news just made its way on X, and somehow this one flew past us. So we actually have 6 stories tonight. We will do call-in tonight after the show. I know I haven't been able to do call-in for a while, so we'll do that tonight after the show. So what are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail with you. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah. Tonight, we are discussing, very interesting here, Aaron Mate versus Megyn Kelly. This was a big one. I was very surprised to see Aaron Mate on Megyn Kelly's show. I was shocked about that one. A lot of times, the gray zone peeps oftentimes are not allowed in certain media spaces, put it that way. But interesting back and forth there about Venezuela. We're going to get into all of that. And Megyn Kelly kind of spills some beans here about, you know, what the corporate media is saying about Venezuela and what she would have been pushed to say if she was still a part of Fox News. So we'll get into all of that. Of course, Scott Ritter is going to join us later in the show to talk about the Maduro hearing and to give his perspective about this as someone who is a former UN weapons inspector. So we're going to get into that. This is an interesting story that we're going to get into. I don't know if everybody heard about this. This is crazy. So CANDACE Owens apparently is officially back from the holiday break, and she announced something that the Daily Wire is doing, and this is like next level trolling. That's what I would call it. I would say what the Daily Wire is doing right now to CANDACE Owens, it's next level trolling. And I can't believe they're even going this far. So the Daily Wire trolls CANDACE Owens. We're going to get into that. If you have not heard, this also happened over the weekend. And I think this story was a little bit hidden because of all the attention on Maduro. But Ibrahim Traore from Burkina Faso had another coup attempt. So we're going to get into that story and why they're coming after Ibrahim. And last but not least, we're also going to discuss the MAGA split that is happening now over Venezuela. So you'll see there's a picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene there, and some of these people that said that they were, anti-U.S. intervention, now all of a sudden seem to be walking that back now that the country is Venezuela. And we do have a breaking story, and it's a bonus one. This one is crazy. Apparently, the judge that was managing Benjamin Netanyahu's case is now dead. Interesting how that happens. Very interesting. So the theme tonight, ladies and gentlemen, again, is they are playing in our face. If you haven't had a chance to do so, do me a solid and smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. And let's go ahead and get into it, ladies and gents. We're going to start off with the breaking news story because, again, I think with all the attention on Maduro, this one kind of just slid by. And now I notice that it is trending on social media. So we got to give attention to this. So breaking news here, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the judge that was presiding over Benjamin Netanyahu's case in Israel is now dead. Imagine that, is now dead. Wait till you see what happened to him, because we've seen this before. Let's go ahead and get into it. And I'll remove this banner for just a second so you guys can read along with me. Beersheba District Court President Benny Saji killed in a shocking crash on Route 6. So again, if you're just joining, this is the judge that was presiding over Benjamin Netanyahu's case. So you guys got to remember, Benjamin Netanyahu does have a case in Israel. He's facing trial there. President Herzog, Supreme Court Chief Justice Minister, lament untimely death of judge who was beloved by all, extraordinarily talented, and a wonderful family man. So this is Judge Benny Sagi, and he's now dead. And wait till you hear what happened to him. This is interesting. The president of the Beersheba District Court, Judge Benny Sagi, was killed on Sunday after a vehicle crashed into his motorcycle while he was traveling on Route 6. Now, this is not unusual with Israel. We have seen multiple cases like this before. Some of them I discussed on the show. Remember the 3 Qatari men that were on their way to that event in the Middle East that Donald Trump was headed to as well. Remember, they died in a car crash, so they didn't make it there. Serena Shim, the award that I just won, Serena Shim was killed in a car accident. There was another segment that I had on the show of a number of scientists that mysteriously died in car accidents, right? Like ones that were from Egypt and from countries like Iran as well. And people always ask, like, how much of this is a coincidence? And what I'm starting to question is it possible that the government could some way, or intelligence can some way, get a hold of your vehicle and can change the way that your vehicle moves or functions or operates? Because it's just too many of these incidents that I have seen where people are dying in these car crashes, and the timing seems to be convenient, of course, for Israel and of course for Benjamin Netanyahu. According to the police, a vehicle that was driving off-road came up onto the highway and hit Saji's motorbike. So we have a car that is driving off-road that comes up onto the highway and hits him while he's on his motorcycle. Yeah, that doesn't sound like an accident to me. That sounds like a hit. How do you just drive the car off-road onto a highway and you run into a motorcycle? So let's continue on here. Megan David Autumn said medics and paramedics who arrived at the scene described the accident as shocking. They said they found Saji laying on the road with multiple injuries and no vital signs and declared him dead at the scene. Yeah, sounds like a hit. FM said, why was he riding a motorcycle? Apparently that was something that he was really into. Like he liked motorbikes and all that type of stuff, you know? Um, Myra said it doesn't sound like a oopsie to me. Yeah, it's like I said, there's a history of this happening. Police have opened an investigation into the accident, which took place close to the Kafir Menachem kibbutz east of Ashdod, while police officers from the Malachi station and road accident investigators examining the circumstances of the crash. Saji was appointed acting president of the Beersheba District Court in June 2024 and took up the position of on a permanent basis in April of 2025. That's the accident right there. So as you can see, here's the bike. Yeah, there's no way he was going to survive that. President Isaac Herzog said he was shocked and pained by the tragic death of Saji, whom he described as a much-loved figure. Judge Saji was a brilliant and sharp jurist, a wonderful judge who combined great professional knowledge and extraordinary honesty. So let's talk about something here, and then I'll get to that case in just a second. So the judge who was presiding over Benjamin Netanyahu's case is now dead. Now, that doesn't stop the case. And one thing I think that we all have to remember, Donald Trump was calling for the pardoning of Benjamin Netanyahu. Shouldn't he be pardoned, he said. And the judge refused to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu. So that's something that people have to remember. He said, no, he's going through this trial. Now, what is this case around Benjamin Netanyahu? I want to show you something here. Prosecution presses Netanyahu on Nir Hafet's ties as cross-examination in case 4000 intensifies. So let's go ahead and get into this here. Again, we've talked about Benjamin Netanyahu with the genocide. We've talked about him with the Greater Israel Plan. But let's not forget, he has a case against him in Israel that involves corruption. So he really has been trying to continue these wars so that he doesn't go to jail. That's what I've been saying for quite some time. Let's go down here. Tensions flared Monday in Tel Aviv District Court as prosecutors pressed Benjamin Netanyahu on inconsistencies in his account of his relationship with former aide and state witness Nir Hafetz. This was during a key phase of cross-examination in case 4000. Also known as the Bizak-Wallah affair, case 4000 centers on allegations that Netanyahu granted regulatory benefits worth hundreds of millions of shekels to Bezek's controlling shareholder, Shaul Elovitch, while serving as a communications minister in exchange for favorable and interventionist coverage of himself and his family on Walla News website, which Elovitch then owned. So we're talking about, again, corruption, mismanagement of funds. The prosecution alleges a quid pro quo arrangement amounting to bribery, while Netanyahu denies the existence of any such deal, arguing that regulatory decisions were professional and lawful and that media coverage was neither controlled nor consistently favorable. The trial has been ongoing since 2020. After months of direct examination by his defense team, prosecutors are currently conducting cross-examination, seeking to challenge his credibility and the coherence of his version of events. So we all know that Benjamin Netanyahu tells a lot of lies. So obviously he's not going to say, yes, I took bribes and yes, I mishandled funds. Of course not. And all this time, I mean, this started in 2020. All this time, I feel like he has just been bombing Lebanon, bombing all these other places, not just because of the Greater Israel Plan, but if you notice, they kind of ramped this up a little bit more. And my thing is, I feel like he's continuing this and he's increasing it because he doesn't want to go to jail. Because as long as there's still war, the people aren't going to vote him out. As we've seen, they're not trying to get rid of him. And as other people have pointed out who have been to Israel, a lot of the Israelis are even to the right of Benjamin Netanyahu. So it's not like they're saying, no, we don't want you to bomb people anymore. That's not the case. And now all of a sudden, the judge that was presiding over this case, dead. And where's the person who hit him? Where's the vehicle that ran into his motorbike? Where's that person? What if that person lost control of their vehicle? It's not always as obvious as people may think. I mean, sometimes these things happen because, and I firmly believe this, I believe that intelligence and technology has a way to grab a hold of someone's vehicle and to make it do what it wants it to do. And some people may see that and they say, well, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, have you paid attention to technology recently? There are whole artificial intelligence videos right now on YouTube where it looks like it's a real person sitting there and it's not. So I wouldn't put it past it, but it's very weird that this guy is now dead. I don't think it's going to stop the case. The trial is going to continue, but it makes me wonder, will they now have someone presiding over that case that may be a little bit more lenient towards Netanyahu? At this point, they're really just playing in our faces. Let's go to some of the comments here. All right. FM said Maduro would get the Mann Act, but he's not black. Kelly said, anyone remember Virginia Giuffre's unfortunate accident shortly before her death? Yeah. See, Kelly remembers. This is what I'm saying. These random car accidents that seem to come out of nowhere. Thank you for the super chat, Texas. It's an oxymoron. Trump known for you're fired, but never fired anyone in 2 terms. That's a good one. That is a good one. Oh, boy. Okay. Let's get into the next one. Think I can make it bigger for you guys? Okay, there we go. All right, ladies and gents, we are moving on to the next story. Again, tonight's theme is playing in your face. Playing in your face. This next story, I feel like, may have been overshadowed somewhat because in the same weekend, Nicolas Maduro was kidnapped by Donald Trump, by the U.S. government, but something else happened. You see, also on January 3rd, it appears that there was a coup attempt, another coup attempt in Burkina Faso. That's right. People have been coming for Ibrahim Traore for quite some time. This guy has survived multiple assassination attempts, and we'll get into why they're coming after him. But this story, I think, needs more attention. Burkina Faso reports foiled coup attempt linked to a former leader. Yeah, it's a big one. So this is Ibrahim Traore. And he basically, had this mindset that I don't want the West in Burkina Faso anymore. Basically told France, told Macron, get out of here. You're not going to take our resources anymore. And we're going to build on our own. And he's been able to do quite a bit since then, which I'll get into as well. And the West doesn't like that so much. They also don't like this alliance that he has with Mali. And what's the other one we have here? The AES alliance. They also don't like that. They don't like the fact that he has been shaking hands with Vladimir Putin, that he's willing to work with Russia. You guys know how this goes. But there was another attempt against him. Burkina Faso's defense and security forces reportedly thwarted a coup attempt on the night of January 3rd, with authorities arresting several suspects allegedly linked to a former interim president, Paul-Henri Damiba, according to local media reports and regional news outlets. The plot, uncovered on January 3rd, led to the arrest of several suspects, including an alleged mastermind described as a known associate of Damiba. One second, excuse me, I have to clear my who briefly ruled Burkina Faso in 2022 before being ousted by the current leader, Captain Ibrahim Traore. The operation was foiled thanks to timely intelligence that allowed authorities to act swiftly, according to Central News in South Africa. So let's chime in here for just a second. January 3rd. Wasn't January 3rd the same night they went and kidnapped Nicolas Maduro? Wasn't that the same? So we're looking at multiple overthrow events here, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, they have been after Ibrahim for quite some time. They want him out of there. The moment that he said that the West has to get out, that France, you cannot stay here any longer and steal our resources. Your soldiers have to go. The moment that that took place, the West said, oh no, we got to come after this guy. And guys, pay close attention to what's happening in Somaliland as well, which isn't far from Burkina Faso and Mali as well. The West really does not like this alliance that these countries have, that AES alliance, where they have decided no Western intervention. We are going to run our countries ourselves, and we'll do better without you here. And that also leads to Israel as well, not just the United States, not just Europe, but also Israel, which now has made it very clear that they recognize Somaliland as an independent country. The only first one to do that. So they're going to go and build a base in Somaliland, and they're going to try to make their way closer and closer to Burkina Faso because they want to shut down that type of resistance. They want people who are going to bend the knee to the West and, of course, to the Zionist entity. Goes on to say here, following reports of the foiled attempt, hundreds of Tory supporters, often called the Wayigians, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, mobilized. During the night of January 3rd and into January 4th, demonstrators occupied roundabouts and public squares, affirming their intention to form a popular barrier against any attempt to overthrow the government. Put it here. And that is essentially what these coup attempts are. That is essentially what these coup attempts are, to overthrow that government. They want them out. They want a Western puppet in there that is going to do their bidding. And Ibrahim Traore is not that person. And they know it. The Sahel Solidarity Campaign Network, SASCAN, a Pan-African advocacy group, issued a statement on January 4th condemning what it described as the latest attempt to overthrow Burkina Faso's government. The organization characterized the incident as involving foreign mercenaries and led by Dememba, though these claims have not been independently verified. So this attempt failed. Ibrahim Traore is still alive. And what I've noticed about him as well, his people really stand up for him. They really fight for him. They're there to protect him because they said, listen, he's building for us. He's doing things for us. And I want to get into that to show you all the things that they've been able to do now that they got the West out. The reality is the West doesn't want a country to be sufficient and to sustain on its own. The West really wants a country that is going to go along with Western agenda. And any other country that's not willing to do that is seen as an enemy. So they'll come up with a reason, give it a couple years from now, they'll come up with a reason to go in and try to overthrow Ibrahim Traore as well. They'll probably tell you he's a dictator. They'll probably tell you that he's a terrorist. We've seen this playbook multiple times before. But what these countries want is to be independent from the West. Sounds similar to Libya and Gaddafi. He wanted to be independent, and they don't really like that. Now, this guy, I want you to show you what this guy said here about some of the things that Ibrahim has been able to accomplish. Check this out.
After his mobilization of the population, many rebel groups would answer his call, and this increased both his influence and his military strength. Together, these groups would effectively curb most of the terrorist activities and influence in the country. Because of this, over 2 million displaced Burkinabés who were driven out of their homes in previous years were able to return and actually resume normal lives. The new young leader would also spearhead numerous infrastructure projects, building regional roads and cross-country highways for the first time ever.
For the first time ever. So once he was able to get them out, get the West out, he was building regional roads and highways for the first time ever. So This is what I was saying before. Leave these countries alone and they will thrive. They fall apart when the West intervenes. Haiti is a perfect example of that, I think. So he is creating a thriving Burkina Faso. Now, that's not something, of course, that the U.S. wants. If we look at something called the Wolfowitz Doctrine, it says that no other country is allowed to become more powerful than the United States or even try to get to that point. And that's part of the reason why the U.S. government has such this vitriol towards China and Russia, because they've become powerful and also economically powerful. And according to the Wolfowitz Doctrine, that's not supposed to happen. So any other country, this is why I'm warning everybody about, that tries to do it on their own and does not want to bend the knee to Western agenda is going to be seen as a target. Listen to what else he's been able to do there.
Roads that took people to people, not just gold out of the country. He also built the country's first independent state bank in 2024.
Ding, 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 ding. Let's go back here. That is the big nugget. That's the big golden nugget. They were able to build the country's first independent bank. And the banks are everything. Imagine that. We have our own bank. We're not relying on these banks from the West. Remember what I told you before about the Rothschilds banks, how Venezuela didn't have a Rothschild bank? Like, this is a big deal. So they're able to control their money, at least for now. But they're still trying to get this guy out. Let's go on here.
Gold out of the country. He also built the country's first independent state bank in 2024. Which the gold is something that I'm going to need to go ahead and mention here right now, because another reason that people love him within the country is how he approached the nation's gold mining industry. Because gold mining accounts for a whopping 12% of the country's entire GDP. And when it comes to the amount of gold mined, the country is in the top 10 in the world. But it hasn't always been the benefit of that kind of status. For the entire history of gold mining industry in the country, they never had a single gold refinery. This is because France wanted to enrich itself and not its colonies. I mean, after all, they're going to want to keep that kind of dependency relationship. So, in November of 2023, Burkina Faso's Council of Ministers would approve the construction of the country's first gold refinery. The country is Africa's fourth largest producer of gold, yet in the past, all the gold mining and exports were managed by colonial rulers. In fact, aside from the roads into and out of Ouagadougou, some of the only roads that the French ever built in the country while they ruled it were roads leading into and away from the gold mines.
So the gold mines were managed by the West. And we've seen this before, right? Where it's your resources, it's your country, but the West has come in and they have decided that they are going to control and manage those resources. I say Haiti again, because I do think Haiti is another good example, and sometimes it's overlooked. If you look back at the history of Haiti, and you'll know that even like Woodrow Wilson went into Haiti like way back in the day, and he brought in the U.S. Marines and they decided to take control in Haiti. Now, when they came there to occupy Haiti at that point in time, they also took control of their banking. So like when people say that Haiti is poor, I'm like, well, Haiti is rich in resources, but you also had U.S. intervention there multiple times, even to the point where they're like, we're going to control your banks. So I ask this question again, how can you grow and thrive when you have constant disruption from the outside? How can you grow and thrive? Let's continue on here.
And the only roads that led to other countries and crossed the border had been constructed solely for the purpose of sending more gold to France. A few months later, Traoré would essentially nationalize the country's entire gold mining industry. This marked a significant development in Burkina Faso's gold sector because previously the gold was mined and the raw ore was trucked out again to be refined by others. Traoré seeks to gain more control over the country's gold resources by refining the gold domestically rather than exporting unrefined materials, boosting jobs within the country as well as reducing outside dependencies. This would increase government revenue and economic benefits from the gold sector. The new refinery Traoré had built created over 100 new jobs and 5,000 new indirect jobs, with the refinery producing around 400 kilograms of gold daily.
Over 100 new jobs. So do you see what happens? Like, no, he doesn't need the West to do that. So when you hear this propaganda where the West says we have to go in and help the people and liberate the people, you see how much better off the people are when you don't have that intervention? Created new jobs and also indirect jobs. So the way I see it, he's winning. The way I see it, Burkina Faso is winning right now. And yeah, the West will look at that as a threat because they don't have control over it. They're totally fine with you doing okay as long as they have control over the resources. They never wanted to get to the point where you can sustain on your own and you don't need them for anything. And I do think Gaddafi is a great example of that. Someone who wanted to move away from the West and said, you know what, I think we kind of want to have our own currency here, kind of do our own thing. Yeah, so then they had to come up with this lie and tell you that Gaddafi was killing his own people. And then they went after him. And we all know that story about how they killed him in front of everybody. They sodomized Gaddafi in front of everyone. And so we all know they'll come up with the reason. And we need to keep talking about Burkina Faso. We need to keep talking about Mali because it will only be a certain time for now. Before you hear the US government say, we got to go into Burkina Faso because Ibrahim Traore is a dictator. We got to go into Burkina Faso because Ibrahim Traore, he's killing his own people. So prepare yourself because I feel like it's only a matter of time.
He also required foreign companies to give the Burkinabe government at least a 15% stake in local operations, a number which will likely continue to rise. And if that number surpasses 51%, then he will have actually nationalized the gold industry in his country, which
you hear that?
Which is considerably a harder task to accomplish than it seems on paper.
So right now, Ibrahim Traore is on board. He's on the path to nationalize gold in his own country. Now, believe it or not, gold is still worth something. And that is not something that the West wants to hear. France is pissed. Macron is not happy that they don't have access to the resources in Niger anymore either. France was robbing Niger blind because Niger has a lot of uranium. So people ask these questions, how do they have all these resources, but the people there are so poor? You'd be poor too if someone was coming in from the outside and they were taking everything. So you could be sitting on a gold mine, but if you don't have access to it, you're going to be poor too, right? Now, there's another thing about Ibrahim that I want to bring up as well. Again, the AES, this relationship is incredibly important here. A marriage of three. Will Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso block reshape the Sahel? Let's go ahead and get into this here. So here they are. These are the lead. They're, again, trying to lead their countries, trying to do their own thing. They're not asking the West to come in and help them with anything. They're like, we got this. We got it, right? So if we go on here, late December, and we had just taken an Air Burkina flight to Dakar, Senegal, across the Sahel, where a storm of political upheaval and armed violence has unsettled the region in recent years. Mali sits at the center of a reckoning. After two military coups in 2020 and 2021, the country severed ties with its former colonial ruler, France, expelled French forces, pushed out the UN peacekeeping mission, and withdrew its alliances. Alongside Burkina Faso and Niger, now also ruled by military governments backed by Russian mercenaries, it formed the AES in September 2023. Together, the regional grouping withdrew from the wider economic community of West African states bloc, accusing it of serving foreign interests rather than African ones. This month, the leaders from those three countries converged in Bamako for the Confederal Summit of Heads of State of the AES, the second such meeting since the alliance was formed. So these guys decided to come together. And this goes back to this idea of a multipolar world, right? Which we talked about before, where you are seeing, and it's not just BRICS, but BRICS is a big part of it, but you're seeing people in other countries form an alliance outside of the West and say, how about all of us work together and let's not bend the knee to what the Western powers want? we're seeing more and more of this. So there's the AES. I mean, they're not a part of BRICS. So there's different types of coalitions that are happening where they're deciding to do what's best, what they feel is best for their people. And speaking of that, this is something else that you need to see. All three of those countries have decided to walk away from the ICC, the International Court. And I want you to hear the reason why they want to walk away from it. Let's go ahead and bring in this video here.
Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger say that they are withdrawing from the International Criminal Court. The three West African countries accuse the ICC of being a, quote, instrument of neo-colonialist repression, saying that it only targets less privileged countries. They said they will no longer recognize its authority. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are all led by military governments, and those three governments have said that they will set up what they called indigenous mechanisms in its place.
Now, let's just pause here for a second. You know why they want to walk away from the ICC? Because the ICC can't even hold Israel accountable. They make their claims and they say they must do their best that they can to, prevent genocide, but they can't really do anything. They can't make them stop doing what they're doing. And to their point, what they have seen is that the ICC tends to target those that are from countries like theirs. They don't tend to hold the West accountable, is basically what they're saying. So they are seeing the writing on the wall. And they're seeing that the ICC basically just serves the West, the European countries, and the America. They basically just serve them and do what's best for them. That includes Israel too, by the way. So they can write a statement. They can make a statement and say they must do everything in their power that they can to prevent a genocide from happening, but they don't really force them to do anything. And then on top of that, I mean, how many times have you heard politicians right here in the United States say, yeah, well, the ICC can't do anything to Israel. It doesn't really matter. So now they're deciding to walk away from that. What do you think about that? Let's go on a little bit more here.
Al Jazeera's Nicholas Hack reports from Dakar in Senegal.
An instrument of neo-colonial repression in the hands of imperialism. Those are the cutting and strong words used in a joint statement from the Sahel countries. They say that the International Criminal Court delivers selective justice, a feeling shared by other countries in Africa, where there seems to be a disproportionate amount of Africans being prosecuted at the ICC. There's been former heads of states, politicians that have spent years in detention to be then released without charge. Now, in the statement, they say that the ICC seems incapable of prosecuting obvious crimes, crimes against humanity, war crimes, but also crimes of genocide, clearly pointing the finger to Israel without mentioning them by name.
Everybody hear that? So this is important for everyone to see, and, mark this, save this video for another time, because it will only be a matter of time before Israel is going to target them as well, because they're calling them out and they're saying, like, you have not held them accountable for genocide. So they are not on that side of the aisle. They're on the other side. Pay attention to all the countries that the government tells you that these people have bad leaders or they're dictators or so and so. And even then, like I've said time and time again, it is not our concern. Same thing with the Venezuela situation. What did I say? They were like, well, he didn't actually win the election. I'm like, that's the concern of the people of Venezuela. That's not our concern. We can't even get our own damn election straight. But we all the way over there. So keep an eye on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the AES. Keep an eye on them. We will continue to monitor what they're doing. Because right now, it seems like to me, from what I've been reading and seeing, the people in Burkina Faso are happy with what Ibrahim is doing. That's why they're willing to do what they can to protect him. They're happy. They are happy. I say that again, because it's only going to be a matter of time before Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald Trump, or someone else tells you the people are not happy and that the people want him gone. So we have to note these moments now while we still can. So yeah, attempted coup against Ibrahim, same day as the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat, ladies and gents. Hey, hey, hey. Vilma, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Burkina Faso were very close to the heart of Gaddafi. Gaddafi supported these countries using his oil wealth. Hence, he fought for a currency backed by gold, not the petrodollar. Ding, ding, ding. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. August 2023, Burkina Faso chartered a national public bank finance infrastructure. I think you mean infrastructure. Yep. Thank you, Gwendolyn. Ancestors protect Ibrahim Traore. And thank you, E-Right. Long live the AES. Yeah, guys, we can't sleep on this one. Fall says Venezuela wanted to move away from the U.S. petrodollar and join BRICS. Texas says you can read his energy. It's all positive and gentle. Yeah. And they like him too. Like they love Ibrahim. Shout out to Roger, who's been a member for 30 months. My bad, August 2024. Let's start making moves here in the States to start chartering state public banks. Start with CBI states. Yeah, a public bank. And for those who are not aware, North Dakota has a public bank. It's called the Bank of North Dakota. I've tried to get them to come onto the show. They really don't want this attention, apparently. But it's one of those things I don't think they really want to talk about. But North Dakota has a public bank, and they've had it for a very long time. And what's important to note about that is during the 2008 housing crisis, the state of North Dakota, they didn't suffer as much as other states because they had a public bank. So, you know, the central bankers don't want you to talk about that, though. They don't want you to talk about public banks. They're like, oh, no. Then they're moving their money away from me. So, yeah, the fact that that seemed to take place same weekend as the Maduro kidnapping, I really do feel like they're playing in our faces. And I feel like because there was so much attention on Maduro, this story just kind of snuck by a lot of us. So, all right. Skylar says, child, North Dakota is one of them states that I forgot exists until someone brings it up in conversation, which is almost never. LOL. Yeah, I know. They don't really put themselves out there like that, to be honest with you. Okie dokie. Let's keep it moving and grooving. We're doing pretty good on time. If you're just joining, guys, we will do call in tonight, ladies and gents. So stay tuned for that. It's been a while. I'm excited to do call in. Okay. Yeah. If you haven't had a chance to do so, ladies and gents, go ahead and smash that like button, and we're going to keep it moving and grooving. Let's do the damn thing. Let's move on to this new infighting. I don't know if everybody has seen, but it's loud and proud and out there now. I told you before there was obviously a split between some of the, MAGA folks with Israel. And now we're also seeing a split when it comes to Venezuela and what just happened. And some of the people that said they were against intervention, U.S. intervention, are now all of a sudden being exposed. They're literally playing in our faces. First one up is Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, I want to show you what he said before. Z Squirrel pointed out, you are owned by Zionist Ben Shapiro. You are a slave. This is what Matt Walsh, who's one of the hosts of the Daily Wire, this is what he said before, right? So prior to Maduro's kidnapping. We've spent the last 25 years bringing freedom and democracy to countries around the globe, while our own country has been systemically invaded, and now our largest cities are run by foreigners and communists. He always has to bring in the culture war. You know how he is. Like, he thrives on that. If you want to know why I'm so avowedly non-interventionalist, this is why. So this was just June of 2025. So this wasn't a long time ago. And Matt Walsh was all out there like, no, I'm against U.S. intervention, because we spoke before about how U.S. intervention leads to displacement, right? So he said he was against it because he doesn't want those foreigners here. He's like, I don't want those foreigners or those commies here in the United States. He had to do the culture war thing because he makes a lot of money off of that. So now it's just everybody's being exposed. Now Matt Walsh is making excuses for what just happened to Maduro. Now all of a sudden he's totally fine. And this is the statement. A lot of people are calling him out. Yes, I oppose fighting decade-long wars half a world away to bring democracy to Islamic tribesmen. See, he always got to make everything about identity. That's the thing that kills me. On the other hand, I support a 90-minute military operation against an adversarial communist government in our own hemisphere to directly benefit America and its people. There is no contradiction between these two positions. Not every military action is the same as every other. And this is Viva Free. A lot of people have been calling him out. Viva Free is also right-wing, I believe. And Viva Free said going to war to secure vital resources for your own people is totally legitimate. Wow, how quickly people change. Never thought I'd pick a Twitter fight with Matt Walsh, but here we are. And he's pointing out when Matt Walsh said this also in June, the U.S. has been at war with one random Middle East country after another for my entire adult life. It's baffling that there are people who want this to continue. Can we focus on our own problems for a change? Is that such a radical suggestion? So again, guys, it's not like he said these things 3, 4, 5 years ago. That was just in 2025. I mean, so it wasn't long ago. And what I predict, and we'll go back to this part here, is that Matt Walsh, all these people part of the Daily Wire, also got a call. The same way people got that call about Israel, I think they got this call about Venezuela. Some of them may surprise you as well. But Matt Walsh here, when he says it's in our hemisphere, so he is now telling you that the United States owns the hemisphere now. You see that type of colonial mindset? It's our hemisphere. We own it. When there were people here long before any of us. Any of us. But he's being called out, right? Now, he's a part of the Daily Wire, and of course, like Ben Shapiro supports this as well. So basically, and Ben Shapiro is his boss, so he's doing what his boss told him to do. People are being contradicted in real time, folks. Another one is Nick Fuentes, who now is all of a sudden walking back. And we're going to see the before and after. Let me go ahead and bring this up here of what he said prior to the kidnapping of Maduro about Venezuela and what he is saying now. Let's go ahead and bring this before the kidnapping.
Who cares if Venezuela is run by some corrupt, petty tyrant? It's South America. They're all like that. It's always been like that. Who cares if Venezuela is run by some corrupt, petty tyrant? It's South America. They're all like that. It's always been like that. Just take their shit. Get as many countries on our side of the ledger so that we can take their shit. I don't know. Is that complicated? But on the other side of this debate, you have the ideological neocons like Rubio, like John Ratcliffe, the CIA director. You have these other people that insist, no, that's not good enough. We need a U.S. puppet in place. We need this female resistance leader that's pro-democracy. Their election was fake. Dude, our election was fake. You think our elections are real? They said Maduro lost the 2024 election. Yeah.
We can't play this part, so hold on just a second. That's a YouTube thing. That's not a me thing. So we can play this part right here.
Start with that.
This is a historic phone call.
I actually probably favor regime change in Venezuela, to be honest. I think that that is a perfectly legitimate strategic goal of the United States. You know,
he, out of all the people, is really getting ratioed on X, on social media, him of all people, because people are like, well, there's flip-flop Fluentes once again. Flippity floppity. They all got the call. They got the call. You better get in line for this one. I don't care if you're anti-war. I don't care if you're against regime change. You better get on board for this one, ladies and gentlemen. And you better tell your audience to support it, because right now the numbers show, the polls show the majority of Americans do not support what just happened in Venezuela. And that's on both sides of the aisle. Right? So we're going to get to the ones that feel differently in just a second. But he is one of the ones that a lot of people are coming after, and they're like, dude, you're a fraud. Someone made used the track APAC thing. I don't know if they made this or someone made it themselves, and said Nick Fuentes, leader of America First, the Zionist, ran cover for Israeli involvement in Kirk's death, called for jailing and censorship of anti-Zionists, got the call. I think it's interesting how everybody says it's got the call now.
United States. You know, we talk all the time about Israel and the war over there, and those are wars that don't benefit the United States. At a pro-American regime in Venezuela probably would be good for us because of the resources they have.
Yeah, that's essentially, as I told you guys before, that's colonialism. That's really what it is. Let's just take their resources and all these things. How it started. Nick Fuentes says in just the last week, Trump called to reinvade Afghanistan, vowed to help Ukraine defeat Russia, and is currently pushing for regime change in Venezuela. And it's only a matter of time before Israel drags us to war with Iran again. What happened to no new wars? That was September of 2025. Fast forward, Nick Fuentes, USA. Of course, January 3rd, 2026, after they kidnapped Maduro. So people are calling it out.
And I just want to enjoy today and this week and this month and even the rest of this year.
And of course, that's Nat Rothschild. Well done, Donald J. Trump, right? So people are calling out all of those that said they were against regime change and they're non-interventionalists who now all of a sudden got the call to fall in line. So far we have seen Matt Walsh, we've seen Nick Fuentes, and then we got Alex Jones. And shout out to Dave DeCamp. I don't know if everyone follows him on X, but Dave DeCamp he's really good at ratioing people on X. He's really good at doing that. He said, "Thank you, Alex Jones, for providing a clip from a TV show that the CIA helped produce to explain to us why we need war with Venezuela." Alex Jones, also, no more regime change, no more wars. Alex Jones says for people who are geopolitically illiterate and don't understand why Trump did what he did, this may help. You are witnessing a return to the Monroe Doctrine. And he's sharing this show, and I forget the name of this show, but that's the guy from The Office. Some of you might recognize him. We can't play the show on here because of copyright, but that's the guy from The Office. And that was a show where it's the CIA, like it's a CIA show. And I mean, they're basically promoting the need for war with Venezuela. I saw one episode of that show. I never finished the rest of it, but that's what it is. It's a CIA show, right? So Alex Jones, another one that is being called out because people are flippity flopping. Everybody got the call. They're literally playing in our faces, but there are some true ones that are not flip-flopping. And one of them is Thomas Massie. So you're about to see that split happen. He has not wavered on his position about these regime change wars. And I want you to hear what he says here.
Previous presidents told us to go to war over WMDs, weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. Now it's the same playbook, except we're told that drugs are the WMDs. This is about oil and regime change. Mr. Speaker, James Madison warned us that in no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confides the question of war and peace to the legislature and not the executive. Madison called it the crown jewel of Congress. The framers understood a simple truth. To the extent that war-making power devolves to one person, liberty dissolves. If the president believes military action against Venezuela is justified and needed, he should make the case and Congress should vote before American lives and treasure are spent on regime change in South America. Let's be honest about likely outcomes. Do we truly believe that Nicolas Maduro will be replaced by a modern-day George Washington? How did that work out in Cuba, Libya, Iraq, or Syria? Previous presidents told us to go to war over WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, that did not exist. Now it's the same playbook, except we're told that drugs are the WMDs. If it were about drugs, we'd bomb Mexico or China or Colombia, and the president would not have pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez.
This is the important part, right? So like people like Thomas Massie, when you see him give this speech, you understand why Donald Trump and Miriam Adelson and other billionaires have collaborated together to try to get him out of his seat. That's happening right now as we speak. And I never would have thought, if someone would have told me years ago, you're going to agree with Thomas Massie on something, I would have never believed it. I would have said, yeah, right. But here we are. And we're here because there are some that said they don't support these wars. They don't support regime change. And no matter how much pressure they got from the leaders of their party, they didn't pivot. They didn't change their mind. And that's why they're after him right now. Like they're attacking him left and right. Donald Trump just wrote this long ass statement on Truth Social talking about why Thomas Massie needs to go because he's not willing to support his wars and all this stuff. So if you know much about Thomas Massie, you know he's a big like money dude, right? Like he's really into the numbers. He's complained a lot about the debt. Although if I ever had the opportunity to speak to him, I would explain to him that, you know, according to modern monetary theory, there is no such thing as a real debt. The debt ceiling is actually a myth. If you look at MMT. So if I had the chance to talk to him, I would explain that to him. But he's a big one about like, we shouldn't be spending all this money on this and that and stop sending money to Israel and all these other countries. And he also does not take money from the Israeli lobby. So I think he's one that they've been looking to kind of push out for quite some time. He has become much more vocal this year. And of course, also backing the supporters in the Epstein case as well.
This is about oil and regime change. And when it comes to regime change, we've already been down this road with Venezuela with nothing to show for it. In 2019, we recognized Juan Guaido. We seized their embassy here in D.C. We were told that regime change was imminent. Years later, Maduro remains in power. Today, we're told to place our hopes in other exiled figures. Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado. I wish them well, I do. But Congress should not express moral sympathy in the form of a blank check for military escalation and American lives. And let's take a moment to acknowledge the contradiction at the heart of this policy. This administration tells us that the Maduro regime is made up of narco-terrorists, and by escalating toward war, we would predictably create countless refugees. At the same time, this administration has moved to end temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans and deports them back to the very regime it condemns. So which is it? Are we prepared to receive swarms of the 25 million Venezuelans who will likely become refugees and billions in American treasure that will be used to destroy and inevitably rebuild that nation? Do we want a miniature Afghanistan in the Western Hemisphere?
That's essentially what it could be, right? Another Afghanistan.
If that cost is acceptable to this Congress, then we should vote on it as a voice of the people and in accordance with our Constitution. And yet today, here we aren't even voting on whether to declare war or authorize the use of military force. All we're voting on is a war powers resolution that strengthens the fabric of our republic by reasserting the plain and simple language in the Constitution that Congress must decide questions of war. I urge support for this resolution, and I yield back.
Gentleman, time.
By the way, I don't know who this guy is, but he's in the shot the entire time. This guy, right? I don't. So sorry about that guy. I think we got the rest there. Yeah. So Thomas Massey there, speaking what he feels, what he means, not willing to back down, not willing to cave to pressure, right? And there's been a lot of pressure towards him from the Trump administration. Like, you better get in line, right? Same thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who also is not willing to bend the knee. And you guys know, like, she's heading out now. But Marjorie Taylor Greene was on, I believe this is Meet the Press. Yeah. So she was on Meet the Press, and the host, for some reason, was very happy to see her. That's the funny part. But she was on Meet the Press, and she's against this as well. So I'm looking for consistency. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm looking for people who are consistent regardless who is in the White House in that time. So regardless if it's a Democrat in the White House or Republican in the White House, I'm looking for the people who are consistent on the issues and don't run cover for their party just because they are told to bend the knee. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene, like I told you when I said, you know, she got those threats, her son got threatened, and she realized also it's a sinking ship. So she's heading out, but I want you to hear what she said about this.
Welcome back. And joining me now is Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Congresswoman, welcome to Meet the Press.
She is very happy to see her. I don't think I have ever seen Kristen that excited to see Marjorie Taylor Greene on Meet the Press. Kristen is like, hello, welcome.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Tomorrow is your last day in Congress, so incredibly significant to have you here today, Congresswoman. You and President Trump, of course, had an extraordinary break last year. We'll talk all about that in just a moment. But I do want to talk about something you said this weekend in the wake of this attack against Venezuela, removing Nicolas Maduro. You said that the administration's actions were not America first. Now, the president was asked about this idea yesterday. I want to play that clip and get your reaction on the other side. Take a look.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world.
Why do you disagree, Congresswoman?
Well, you know, I served on the Homeland Security Committee for 3 years, and I am overwhelmingly in support of a strong border. I impeached Secretary Mayorkas. Those were my articles of impeachment that passed the House because fentanyl overdoses skyrocketed to 280% in my own district. And the majority of American fentanyl overdoses and deaths come from Mexico. Those are the Mexican cartels that are killing Americans. And so my pushback here is if this was really about narco terrorists and about protecting Americans from cartels and drugs being brought into America, the Trump administration would be attacking the Mexican cartels. Now, I am not defending Maduro. And of course, I'm happy for the people of Venezuela to be liberated. But Americans celebrated the liberation of the Iraqi people after Saddam Hussein. They celebrated the liberation of the Libyan people after Gaddafi. And this is the same Washington playbook that we are so sick and tired of, that doesn't serve the American people, but actually serves the big corporations, the banks, and the oil executives. And so my pushback here is on the Trump administration that campaigned on Make America Great Again, that we thought was putting America first. I want to see domestic policy be the priority that helps Americans afford life after 4 disastrous years of the Biden administration. I want to see domestic policies that prioritizes jobs and affordable housing for Americans after 4 disastrous years of the Biden administration. And I want to see domestic priorities that put Americans first in regards of healthcare. Health insurance costs too much, car insurance, home insurance. And these are issues that matter to Americans. We don't consider Venezuela our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is right here in the 50 United States, not in the Southern Hemisphere.
Now, she almost got it there. She came very close. Again, if I had the opportunity to speak to her, I would tell her there's nothing wrong with defending Maduro. Like I would tell her that, right? Like, and I think, you know, she's on her way out now. So Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Congress, I think that's going to give her some time to get away from that DC swamp. And just to do some research of her own. But if I were to speak to her, I would tell her there's nothing wrong with defending Maduro, and we can get into the details and the specifics about that. But what she said there hits right back at home, right? She's saying, what about the domestic policies? What about the domestic issues right here? Because you see, here's the thing. This isn't 2016 anymore. It's also not 2020. And this time around, when you run a campaign on, you know, America first, or trying to benefit the American people, implement policies that's going to help the American people. Turns out people really wanted that. And there were people that really took that seriously, considering the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic and we're coming out of an economy after a pandemic. And there was so much going on economically in this country. So when Donald Trump said those things, a lot of people did believe it, that he was going to get it right back on track, which is what he said he was going to do. And Marjorie Taylor Greene supported him all the way. But it looks like to me, she's one of the ones that's being consistent. And that's what I'm looking for, folks. I'm not looking to see, you know, what team you're on. I'm looking to see, are you consistent on the issues? Because it would have been easier for Marjorie Taylor Greene to just go along with what Donald Trump told her to do. It would have been easier for her not to stand by the victims of Epstein and not to collaborate with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie in pursuing that type of justice. It would have been easier for her not to speak out against what Israel was doing. She came kind of late. She came kind of late, but she came. It would have been easier for her not to speak out against, you know, even with Venezuela. Career-wise, that would have been the easy thing to do. But she didn't go there. And I think what's interesting to me is that when people say, I'm mad because I'm seeing leftists say good job to MTG, but they're not saying that to AOC. And I think the difference is that when Biden was in office, we were asking people like AOC to stand up to Joe Biden publicly. She would not do it. Marjorie Taylor Greene stood up to Donald Trump publicly, to the point where he started going after her and calling her a traitor, to the point where her family was getting death threats. Because you see, when you come Johnny come lately, after the president is already, you know, Biden's already out, and then you do this town hall with Bernie and you say, well, you know, we were trying to push him behind the scenes. Ain't nobody got time for that. Nobody knows what you really did behind the scenes. What we do know is what you did not do publicly. And I think that takes more guts. So this split over Venezuela, Marjorie Taylor Greene not going along with the others and saying, yeah, get him, great job, you know, President Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene saying fentanyl is not even produced in Venezuela, which is what I've been telling people. It's not. And then here's the other thing. Let's say you do have, your big issue is fentanyl. And we have had a problem in this country with fentanyl overdoses, especially in the rural communities. You know where a lot of that also came from? The Sackler family. Why isn't Donald Trump, the Trump administration, why aren't they going after the Sackler family? Why is Richard Sackler still walking free? We're talking about a family that killed thousands of people in coal mining towns, in red districts, killed all those people and got away with it because they're rich. We're talking about a family that basically bribed the FDA to put a label on their product that basically tells you it was safe for you when it was not. We're talking about, I'm sorry, I have a big issue with the Sackler family. We're talking about a family that even after they knew that people were dying from Oxycontin, continued to push it to doctors to sell. So why aren't they going after them? What do you think Oxycontin is? Now, eventually, of course, there was this big hearing with Congress, but people have to understand that was years later. You know how many people died over the years from Oxycontin? It took a long time for it even to reach Congress. But they don't go after those people. So she is being consistent. Let's go on a little bit more here.
Well, let me ask you, because President Trump says he gets to decide what America First means. Does America First mean whatever President Trump says it does?
You know, America First should mean what was promised on the campaign trail in 2024. So my understanding of America First is strictly for the American people, not for the big donors that donate to big politicians, not for the special interests that constantly roam the halls in Washington, and not foreign countries that demand their priorities put first over Americans. America First actually means for the American people, and the American people have been put last consistently decades and decades by both political parties for far too long. My kids' generation, my kids are 22, 26, and 28, are looking at a future where this whole entire generation doesn't think they'll ever see a Social Security check. They don't believe they'll ever be able to afford to own their own home. And 50-year mortgages are really a slap in the face. It's insulting. Americans don't want $2,000 stimulus checks as a payoff. They want to have good policies brought forth for them, because you want to know something, Kristen? They voted for this administration, and their small dollar donation should matter. And MAGA has its own enemy list, and the enemies of the world are not on their enemy list, and they're tired of being ignored.
So there you have it, right? Bringing up those domestic issues that a lot of people are concerned about. Listen, anytime I'm hanging out with my friends, or if I just, just running into people at the gym or the grocery store, or all these little bits of places that I go to throughout the week, nobody ever comes up to me in conversation. Nobody ever said, man, I sure am worried about that Maduro. Wonder how he's treating people down there in that Venezuela. Nobody ever says, did you hear that Nicolas Maduro is a dictator? No one ever says in conversation to me, I heard Nicolas Maduro actually didn't win that election. You know what people do say to me? I don't know if I'm even going to get Social Security by the time I'm old enough to get it. I hope I don't get laid off, because I don't know what I'm going to do about the health insurance situation. I hope my gas doesn't go up. I hope my landlord doesn't increase my rent again next year. Those are the things that people say to me. The average American is not sitting back thinking about what Nicolas Maduro is doing in Venezuela. The average American is not. Now, here's something else that you guys need to see. I found this pretty interesting here as well. They are really playing in our faces, and they're getting desperate, because you see, now the Zionists, they really got Christian Zionist pastors out here telling people that God said all of Venezuela's oil rightfully belongs to the United States. I kid you not. Listen.
They say you have seized Venezuela for the oil. Yes, this is true, that there is that which has been brought to the forefront of this earthly battle. But the enemy has sought and was seeking to bring war and to bring conflict through Venezuela and to control the oil of the earth. But the spiritual oil and the natural oil does not belong to the forces of darkness or to those who thought that they could bring a one world order. This is my reset. And the oil of the natural and the oil of the spirit is mine, says the Lord.
Jesus ain't tell you that. So you see what's happening? They're so desperate now, they're using Christian pastors to tell people that the oil belongs to us. Is that what the Bible taught? And people not even using the brain and to see what the Bible said. And people say all these things that the Bible does not even say. It's stealing. So do people think that Jesus would say, oil for you, but not for them? Yeah, you guys go take all that oil. It's meant for the United States, not for the Venezuelans. Does that sound like something Jesus would have said in the Bible for those who went to church? Does that sound biblical to you? It is theater at this point. It is theater at this point, ladies and gentlemen. They are playing in our face. There's no way, and I say this because I know there's people in that congregation who actually are sitting there and they're believing everything this guy is saying. He's a clown. So they're trying to do everything that they can to get you on board with more war. And they're going to use teachers. They're going to use pastors. They're going to use musicians, Zionist musicians, celebrities, athletes. They're going to use whoever they can as a tool, including those that are a part of MAGA that said they were non-interventionalists, like the Alex Jones, like the Matt Walsh, like the Nick Fuentes. People just be out here saying anything, just literally anything. And a lot of this goes back to the Isaac Accords. You know, we talk quite a bit about the Abraham Accords on this show, not as much about the Isaac Accords. Milei announces the launch of the Isaac Accords in a meeting with Israel's foreign minister. Check this out. Argentina has formally launched the Isaac Accords, a new initiative aimed at strengthening political, economic, and cultural cooperation between Israel and Latin America. This is a kicker, folks. The Isaac Accords is a thing, and that's the next step for Israel, right? To have that force with Latin America. So they have the Abraham Accords, and they also have the Isaac Accords. So people have to pay attention to what is going on. They have their foot in Syria, Lebanon. They have their foot in Somaliland, in other countries in Africa, and now the Isaac Accords with Latin America. So when we talk about a lot of this that's happening with even with Venezuela, we also got to remember, someone sent this to me, thank you so much. We got to remember the Isaac Accords as well. A lot of these roads do lead back to Israel. So they're just playing in our face. And if that was your pastor, I feel sorry for you. Leave that church, go somewhere else. It's a damn shame. But you all can see it. Another split here happening, this time over Venezuela. Interesting. All right. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Eric, can we go to part 2 for a tight VNC? Thank you, Roger. Anyone need help? I'm willing to offer my help. All right, Roger. Well, we'll see you on, hopefully we'll see you on call-in tonight. Thank you, Deep Green. Nick Neocon Fuentes. Thank you, Demi. Do dissidents discuss MAGA/Venezuela issue, pointing out the divide is showing who is anti-war, but not against imperialism? I know myself said Jack Ryan. Yeah, Jack Ryan. That was the name of that show, Jack Ryan. Thank you, Roger. Andrew Yang. That was not Andrew Yang. I don't think that was Andrew Yang sitting there. I don't think that was him. Thank you, Focus. Thomas Massey for president, Focus says. Thank you for the super sticker, Chuck Smith. Thank you. Thank you, Karina. Yes, consistency. That would be nice. Leroy said MTG is going to be replaced by Uber Zionist. Yeah. Shout out to Kit from Hardlands Media, says tariff the like button. Oh, Casey, I'm sorry to hear that. Casey said killed her husband. I think she's talking about Oxycontin. Yeah. Sorry to hear that, Casey. Thank you, Focus. We all know why the Sacklers get away with it. The same reason Sidney Gottlieb got away with it. Thank you, Pikachu. Sackler Faculty of Medicine at Tel Aviv University. Thank you, RM. Everyone knows Jesus drove a Tesla. It's in the Bible. Thank you, Lewis. Sabby, do you think they will kidnap Maduro's son? Anything's possible. And thank you, J and E. Next, they'll say Jesus turned water into oil. Oh man, you guys are too funny. Okay, let's keep up with the time here so we make sure we have time for Scott as well. Yeah, okay, so here we go. All right. So this is really interesting. When we talk about people playing in our face. The Daily Wire, they got to be the ultimate trolls for this one. The Daily Wire has decided to relaunch CANDACE Owens' podcast that was a part of the Daily Wire, but without CANDACE Owens, using her name, using her image, and they're launching it as a troll podcast. I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not. CANDACE Owens just came back from holiday break. She talked about it, and you guys have got to see this. I'm going to show you the channel and everything. Like, when you think they can't get any lower, this is a doozy.
About an hour before we went live, a bunch of people were messaging me saying that the Daily Wire had brought back my old YouTube channel. They had seemingly deleted it. Apparently, they just privatized it. And they brought it back. And as you could see, they premiered an old trailer from when I was joining the Daily Wire. And this wasn't a mistake. This was not a mistake because they put a card in the front that said this was shot in 2021. So what are they doing? They also did the same thing on Instagram. My old Instagram channel, they re-released my trailer from when I was first joining them. So clearly they're trying to get attention for something. And I can tell you what that something is. I love scooping people when they're just being weird. First, I should say, I did have a little bit of sympathy over this break. I would like to apologize to the midget horse. The midget horse never deserved the FU. There's nothing wrong with being a midget horse.
So do you guys remember when Candace said that Ben, F you with that midget horse that you have? You guys remember that? Yeah, I think that really got to Ben. A lot of us were making fun of that. There was pictures, there's images all over social media about Ben Shapiro on a little midget horse, and it was really funny. But I think Ben probably didn't like that too much. and that kind of makes me wonder if that's why they're doing this trolling effort. Let's go on a little bit more here.
And yeah, I was a little fired up and I attacked a small horse that probably did nothing wrong, if I'm being honest. Now, more broadly speaking, the reason I had sort of snapped at the end of last year is that it has been a very long road, as I showed you an example of me just trying to be fired like a normal person. Just so you guys know, in a normal world, your employer, if they fire you, that should be the last you hear of them. You should not then have them follow you to events, calling people to try to get you canceled from speaking events, putting pressure on people, lawsuits. That's actually toxic. And when I said to people that it was getting to a point where I felt like I was being stalked by them, I said this like privately. I said,
so I didn't know about that until I saw this recently. It seems like even after she was removed from the Daily Wire, they were basically trying to make it so that she could not continue on anywhere. That's what it sounds like. Instead of just saying, okay, you're fired, good luck in the future, and just parting ways and going about business as usual, it sounds like they were still trying to actively go about their way to make sure that she really would not continue on anywhere else. That is some sneaky, conniving crap. Because yeah, typically if someone's fired or whatever, like you part ways, you do it business as usual and you keep it going. But if they're willing to go to that extent to try to prevent her from continuing to either have a show or speaking events, that is just, it's thought behavior. Like it really is. It's thought behavior that's raunchy, that's nasty. And it's almost like, if we can't have you, then no one else can. If you're not going to be with us, then you're not going to be anywhere. comes across as very controlling, in my opinion.
But I genuinely feel like when you break up with someone and you have a crazy ex, that was how it felt like being fired from the Daily Wire. Except in this circumstance, the ex broke up with you, but then I guess like maybe changed their mind or just didn't want to see you move on and be happy or successful. There was an element of this that felt, and I truly am not trying to be dramatic here, it felt like a crazy ex-stalker. Like, if I can't have you, nobody can have you, you know? And so to connect this point, to build this corollary for you guys, that was how I felt. That was what I was expressing to you at the end of last year.
It's also censorship. And we have to add this part, guys. That's the other element to this, not just like the crazy stalker move, but it's censorship. Essentially, they're trying to silence her or anyone else who would have been in that situation. You talked badly to a rabbi. You criticized Israel. You brought Norm Finkelstein on your show. So you got to go. Oh, and we're going to make sure, by the way, that nobody else will pick you up anywhere else. That is really conniving, but it's also censorship. That's essentially what this is. We're going to make it so that you can't speak anywhere else. We're going to try our best to stop you no matter where you go. We're going to silence you. Now, what happened to Mr. Ben Shapiro? Facts don't care about your feelings. Because when you listen to it this way, it sounds like this is definitely an emotional response coming from the Daily Wire, that we're just going to silence you wherever you go. You guys see why I'm against that? I'm against the censorship. I'm against the silencing.
That I was done with it, right? I was like, I'm leaving Daily Wire in 2025, come hell or high water. Well, they want hell or high water because it turns out the reason they're doing this and doing it on my channel is because they are trying to hard launch a young woman named Madison Bransford. Okay. Now she's apparently an intern at the Daily Wire, and they're basically dropping like an iCarly type Nickelodeon feel show where
another creation. So we'll come back to this, but I just want to go back to this picture here. So essentially they have it's a creation. This is a character that they created, and this is someone that they hired to do it. The woman in this picture. And it just makes you wonder how real any of these people are. Like I said before, I think that like Matt Walsh with his constant like culture war, like BS, he's always either going after LGBTQ or he's going after, Black this or, commie this. He's always going after a different like identity. That's his role. That's his character. So essentially the Daily Wire has actors portraying political commentators, maybe a little bit of video essay in there as well. But these people are characters.
Like an iCarly type Nickelodeon feel show where she's going to make fun of me. And the show is entitled In the No-No because apparently they watch every second of my show, which they've been doing for a very long time. They used to send clips and have people make fun of me when I was first getting started. And so now, because they still can't let me go, and since Ben is now on stage bringing me up and saying, we don't know, but we know, like it's giving crazy ex-stalker. They're now launching a show with this girl. I'm sure she's a lovely human being. It's basically like they tried to find someone that's similar to Brett, but it's not at all because it's not mature. And she's just going to make fun of this show. So that's what the Daily Wire has in store. I'm sorry to have scooped you on this new brilliant idea.
So they hired this girl to portray a character to make fun of Candace Owens' show. Do you guys see how people do you? And I wonder sometimes, does Candace ever look back on this and wonder the number of times that she came in to, defend them, to defend Ben, defend Matt Walsh and all of them that were part of Daily Wire, back in the day when they were still cool with her. And do you see how they respond? So now they want to watch a show where this girl just trolls the Candace Owens show. And these were her friends. This is why I say, like, look, you be careful about trusting people in this space. But they were her friends. She was friends with Ben Shapiro. She was friends with Matt Walsh and all of them at one point. And how serious is the Daily Wire to create a show to just make fun of a show that is, led by one of their former commentators?
You hard launch something on my socials of somebody making fun of me. I'm sure you thought that was going to get some like huge applaud. It's weird. It makes me uncomfortable, if I'm being frank. I'd like you guys to move on. I understand now. You're never going to stop. This is just what we are. You're forever going to obsess about everything that I'm doing. I think it's a bad idea. I would kill it if I were you guys, but I see that you've already made a significant investment. And I hope it works out. I hope a person dedicated to making fun of me in the note, I hope it works out for young Maddie. Anyways, we now need you to.
Yeah, that is wild. That is crazy. And I think she's being especially kind there, because I would just basically say you guys are absolutely immature to even go down that road. Like, how old are they supposed to be? How old is Ben Shapiro at this point in time? You can't be mature and just move on and handle things the way it used to be. So they did relaunch. I want to show you guys this here. So this is a recent tweet. It was posted January 6, 2026. Even Community Notes had to come in and say this account is from before the termination of CANDACE Owens. Daily Wire is attempting to do an impersonation account. So they relaunched it again. Like I said, that's not her. She's real. She's honest. She's uncancelable. Previously aired March 9th, 2021. So look at this, guys. They are trolling hard.
Are we good, guys? Are we rolling? In this age of propaganda, and the media has done a really good job of creating a caricature of Candace Owens. What's going to be different about Candace at the Daily Wire? The timing right now is really crucial to stand up on a platform and to say, I'm here, I'm a conservative, I'm not apologizing. I'm really committed to changing things. I have the courage to stand by my convictions and genuinely believe in the importance of.
They literally are trolling very hard. They're like, let's release this new video again and pretend like it's new, but it's not. The video is from 2021 and they're acting like, oh boy.
Challenging ideas and the importance of debate. And that's why I'm really excited to join the Daily Wire team. This show is going to be uplifting, funny, political. This show is going to be all of the pieces of me.
So yeah, and they put that out there, and people saw this on X and they said, wait a minute. Obviously, it's confusing to people who may not have been aware. And they're like, so does that mean that the Daily Wire is bringing Candace back? No, but they're trolling and they're trying to mislead people. And if you look at the channel, I'm going to show you that it's back, right? So this was the channel, Candace Owens Podcast, right? At the time, it had 2.96 million subscribers. She has more subscribers on her own channel now compared to this one. But if you notice, all the videos are gone except for this one, which I just showed you, which was uploaded one day ago, and it has 20,000 views. So if I go to the homepage, that video's on the homepage. If I click on shorts, it's a short, obviously, from that video, 31,000 views. If I go to videos, it's this video. And let me see if there's any comments. So let's just pause it here for just a second. Let's come down here. Look at this. Can you say stalker, stalker BS? She doesn't work for you anymore. I guess they desperately need the viewership. This is pathetic, childish, and so BS. And another thing that I was going to bring up, and I don't know, how you guys feel about this, but I have this question. Is there any type of rule here over someone using your name and your likeness? And I guess that would have something to do with the contract that maybe she had with the Daily Wire. If there was a contract, maybe they own the rights to the name of that podcast. I don't know. This is the thing about when you start, you get into bed with these people, like you never know, like what you're, especially when you're younger too. And people say, yeah, I want to bring you in as this, but we own the rights to your image, your name, or the name of this podcast. So if they own the rights to that, there probably isn't anything that she could do. But I think this is a warning to people out there that like, we all need to have control over our name, right? Like our name, our image, our likeness. And I've seen multiple stories about musicians that have gone through this as well. Like New Kids on the Block talked about this, how they didn't have any ownership or any rights over how their name was used. So like when they made lunch boxes with their faces on it and t-shirts and all that stuff, that was all in the contract. And they couldn't say, I don't want that made, because they didn't own the name, the rights to the name. So I think these things are important. And I think it's something that people need to think about, especially anybody interested in getting into like political YouTube or any type of podcast YouTube or whatever. When you go to work with someone else, and if there's something to be signed, do you own the right to your name, or is that a no-no? Like that's something to think about, because I think it's ridiculous what they're doing. In fact, people are calling them out. Stephanie Jenkins said, I am done with the Daily Wire, unsubscribed on all platforms. Piggybacking on Candace ratings is an all new low. Get over her, move on, stalker. So there you go. There you go. But to me, not only that, but I feel like it's misleading. It's misleading. It makes people think, and people are asking, are they hurting for views? I mean, if we look at Ben Shapiro's channel, this is a big one. If you've been watching this on Social Blade, Ben Shapiro's YouTube channel has continued to bleed subscribers into 2026, losing roughly 40,000 subscribers over the past month, an average decline of about 1,300 a day. Here's a screenshot here, and this looks like this from Social Blade. Again, yeah, and this is what I was telling people. It just continues. 10,000 leave, 10,000 leave. When you get to be in the millions, you're only going to see this in increments of 10,000. So that's the way it shows there. But people are unsubscribing by the thousands in Ben Shapiro's, channel. And the Daily Wire, it looks like to me they are hurting, right? So it's like now it seems like they're trying to use Candace Owens' image in a misleading way, first of all, to make people think that she's coming back there and she's not. And then apparently going to use that as a troll, for someone to troll her show. It's just really, it's sad. It's sad. And I knew Ben Shapiro was an asshole, but this is a whole new level to me. This is like really like up there. And it really makes you wonder. And I said this, I'm more reluctant myself to defend people. I really got to know you more nowadays. But I wonder if Candace could go back, if she would have done things a little bit differently, if she knew that this is how it was going to turn out, that they were just going to be ridiculous. So they're literally just playing in her face right now. Literally playing in her face. And with all the AI videos that are appearing on YouTube, and there's a lot of them that I've seen, they could create an AI Candace and then just go off with it. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's all over the place. And I honestly think it's immature. All right. I think we have a little bit of time for our next story before Scott joins. So let's go ahead and get into that. And then we'll get to the super chats, guys. Okay. This one's a good one. I was shocked to see Aaron Mate on Megyn Kelly's show. Sometimes, journalists from the gray zone, they're not invited into certain spaces, right? Because some people say they tell a little too much truth, a little too inconvenient truth. But he was there. And I thought this was an interesting back and forth that they had about Venezuela. I'm very shocked that he was brought on to a serious radio show, because Megyn Kelly's show isn't just on YouTube. Obviously, it's a part of Sirius Radio, right? But I think people need to hear what was said. First and foremost, one of the things that Megyn Kelly says here is that she knows if she was still on Fox News, she would not be able to have this opinion that she has about the war right now. Listen to this.
I really think this is something we need to consider both sides on. I really do. I don't think, let me just tell you something. When I was at Fox News, which was a long time, 14 years, I would have known exactly what to do in the wake of Trump's attack in Venezuela, his retrieval, shall we say, to put it in mild terms, of Nicolas Maduro. I would have known that I was supposed to cheerlead it. And I turned on Fox News yesterday, and I'm sorry, but it was like watching Russian propaganda. There was nothing skeptical. It was all rah, rah, cheerleading. Yes, let's go. And that's fine. I love our military as much as anyone, and I believe in President Trump, but there are serious reasons to just exercise a note of caution before we just get on the rah, rah train. All right. I have done that enough times in my career as a Fox News anchor to have been embarrassed enough to know I'm going to stay on the yellow light for this. I'm not in the green light territory. I'm not in the red light territory either, but I am staying in the yellow light territory for now. I see all of the strategic advantages of what he's done. Trust me, I do. I see that other countries like Russia and China and Cuba were all over Venezuela and its oil, posing a potential threat to the United States. I get that. That's actually the most persuasive argument, and obviously the real one, and none of this bullshit about law enforcement. But I have seen what happens when you cheerlead unabashedly U.S. intervention in foreign countries, thinking it's for our good and for the international good, only to wind up with what we've called quagmire in places like Iraq, not to mention Libya. We're not great at going into these foreign countries, decapitating them at the leadership level, and then saying either we're going to steer the country to a better place or it's going to steer itself. Either one. They just 9 times out of 10, they don't work out well. And what does it mean in terms of boots on the ground? Trump is saying, I'm actually fine with that in Venezuela. Well, whose boots? Because I have a 16-year-old boy, and I have a 12-year-old boy, and I have a 14-year-old girl. And a lot of my listeners have children too, who are actually the ones who might have to fill the boots. So I think I speak for a lot of moms and dads for that matter when I say I'm staying in yellow territory until we know more. And I will not be joining the Fox News cheerleading brigade this time. I've been burned too many times.
Okay. So basically what Megyn is saying is that if she was still a part of Fox News, she would have to give the same message about Venezuela that they are giving right now. And, you know, she's not a part of them. She's part of Sirius, and she can say a little bit more here. But, you know, at the same time, I get confused with Megyn Kelly because I feel like what she said there about obviously Fox News is toting the establishment narrative, the narrative that's also coming from the State Department, and she would be expected to do the same if she was still there. I understand that, but I do get confused with Megyn Kelly because I feel like if you can understand that and you can see that, then why couldn't you understand and see that when it came to the Epstein files? And why do you continuously try to make excuses about that particular issue, right? And we've talked about that before on this show. So it's just weird to me. It's like you can get that far, but you're not willing to go a step further and really understand some of these other implications as well. Now, she did have this conversation with Aaron Monte. Like I said, I was very shocked that he was on her show, that she invited him on, because again, like he's going to tell a lot of truth. And sometimes that can be inconvenient, even for Megyn, who's no longer part of Fox News. Take a listen here.
So outline broad brush for us, if you will, why you object to what the United States did in Venezuela on Saturday morning.
Megyn, thanks for having me, and I appreciate you being open to a dissenting perspective on this. It's important we have debate. And in fairness to Fox News, it wasn't just Fox News that is cheerleading this. You could see so many major news networks cheering this on, CBS News and NBC. So this truly, which underscores that this is even though this is Trump's policy, it is bipartisan. There's been a regime change campaign going on in Venezuela by the U.S. for a very, very long time. which everybody in power has supported. And it's important to raise questions and to, challenge the assumptions that have been made to justify this campaign. The reason why I object to this is, first of all, I don't think we have the right to regime change foreign countries. We don't accept foreign countries interfering in the U.S. If we believe in the rule of law, international law, states being equal, states having rights, we don't have the right to go and overthrow a foreign government just because we don't like them. And in Venezuela in particular, it's obvious why we've been doing it. I mean, Trump, to his credit, has been very clear about this. It's for their oil. He said that on Saturday that we're going to take their oil under the so-called Donroe Doctrine. And I don't grant any state the right to do that. It's also going to have serious human consequences. As you mentioned earlier, people were already killed in this attack, which hasn't gotten very much coverage, but dozens of people at least were killed, including civilians inside Venezuela. And if this regime change campaign escalates, many more will be fated to die, including possibly, as you mentioned, U.S. soldiers who will be forced to go in and finish the job.
And I want to say something. That number continues to increase now. The amount of people that are estimated dead in Venezuela after that U.S. Attack there. And this is another thing I wish more people would wake up to. Donald Trump said, we got to protect these Christians that are in Somaliland, and we got to protect the Christian Nigerians and all this stuff, right? But this is another example. Venezuela is, from what I read, overwhelmingly Christian. Also, pretty conservative when it comes to social issues, but they just killed a bunch of Christians. So again, just another example that you can point to there. When it comes to regime change, this is something I think we all need to push back on. One person that I'll remind you of again, Miss Tulsi Gabbard, she's another one that to me, very quiet about all of this. And she has been preaching against regime change for quite some time. And so I think that what Aaron is kind of waking Megyn up to here is that, notice she mentioned Fox News, but what he's correcting her on here is he's saying, like, actually, it was all of corporate media. And he's right. This is bipartisan. That's why you don't see that many Democrat politicians coming out against it either. You would think overwhelmingly the party would say, no, this is wrong, yada, yada, yada. But no, they support it too. They support war. They support the war machine. They get the money from, these weapons manufacturers as well. Like, they have donors that tell them you better support these damn wars. So that's the unfortunate part about it, is that both of those parties do support the war efforts. So that's something, again, I think that Megyn needs to kind of wake up to, is that it is bipartisan. This is not just a Trump thing. There are too many Democrats on the Democrat side that are supporting exactly what Donald Trump did. And I think that's very telling.
But this has been going on for a very, very long time. A brief history, Venezuela first faced a U.S.-backed regime change campaign back in the early 2000s when the Bush administration supported the ouster of Hugo Chavez, tried to install someone who tried to cancel the Constitution. That was reversed by a popular uprising and loyalist military members. But the campaign has continued ever since. And it's been pursued in recent years with sanctions that have had devastating consequences to Venezuela, which then is subsequently used as a pretext to justify regime change. So, for example, there have been many migrants coming from Venezuela. And then if you listen to Marco Rubio, he says, this is one of the reasons why we have to intervene, because we have to stop this migration crisis. Well, what doesn't get mentioned by Marco Rubio and most media accounts of this is that the sanctions we imposed on Venezuela knowingly caused migration. Thomas Shannon, who served under Trump in his first term at the State Department, he warned at the time that, in his words, the sanctions were going to grind the Venezuelan economy into dust and have huge human consequences, one of which would be out-migration. And that's predictable. When you target a country's economy with crippling sanctions, especially Venezuela's oil industry, which accounts for most of its revenue, you're going to cause economic misery. A lot of people fled that as a result. So then we take the migrants and the fact that they're fleeing, and we use that as a pretext to go and overthrow the government, when it's the regime change effort to begin with that has caused this. So look, legally, I don't think we have the right to. And in terms of consequences, I just think this is a disaster for everybody, because as we've seen, regime change campaigns abroad have spillover effects everywhere, including inside the U.S.
Yeah. So this is a really important thing here that Aaron Mate just said. if you're complaining about immigration, you're complaining about migration, but at the same time, you're applauding imperialism, you're applauding intervention. I mean, you can't have it both ways. Because the reality is, imagine if it happened to you, if someone comes into your neighborhood and all of a sudden everything in your town just increases. Whether it's the price of gas, it's the price, like to the point where you really can't afford it, to the point where like maybe, aspirin, and now instead of being like $1 at the dollar store, the Dollar Tree or whatever, maybe now aspirin is like $50. Sanctions are economic warfare. So sanctions can kill people. So now that, especially when it comes to medicine, now that these things cost so much more, what are you going to try to do? You're going to try to go somewhere else where you can get those goods cheaper. So you really can't have it both ways. And I've tried to explain this to people multiple times. So you need to leave these countries alone, let them govern themselves, let them keep their resources. And we would not want to be in that situation. We would like it if another country came to the United States and just said, okay, from now on, we're taking over New York and Florida and California, and we're going to take over a couple of these states. And this is how things are going to go from now. We would be livid. We would be livid. So try to put yourself in their shoes.
The one thing I keep thinking about is before we got Gaddafi in Libya, and that place just turned into a hellhole, we were having sort of proxy fights with Libya. I mean, they weren't really proxy. It was kind of on the nose, but they were conducting certain terrorist operations against us. And then we conducted certain certain military operations against Libya. And it all culminated in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland by Libya. And that was one of my first introductions to international terrorism as a young woman, because I was starting at Syracuse University in 1988. And it happened that there were 35 Syracuse University students on board Pan Am 103. They had been studying abroad in London and were on their way home. And that flight had been targeted by Libya for terrorist activity back at a time when we weren't requiring bags to be identified with their passenger. You could put one on in one city and it would be transferred if the plane had a layover without any question that the person who owned the bag is no longer flying on board the plane. And that's how they managed to bomb this flight that brought down hundreds of Americans, killed hundreds of Americans, including 35 students at my own university where I just started. And it was something that I always remembered. I mean, we were there every 4 years. There would be the memorials. They were young people, 18, 19-year-old people with their whole lives in front of them. My point is,
do you see what Megyn Kelly tried to do there? Let's go back to what Libya did back in 1988, et cetera, right? But what has the United States government been doing, hell, my whole life or your whole life, or hell, just the past 15 years? So I think, you really need to compare the two. I don't like violence against anyone. But it is just kind of weird to me. It's like you can see that act and you can say that's terrorism, but you can't see the United States, the acts that the United States does abroad in all these other countries. You can't see that as terrorism. And I think that's the part to me that is just stunning, that you're not willing to go there. Because if you grow up with this mindset that Americans cannot be that way, that Americans cannot cause terror abroad, then that is part of the problem. And I think a lot of people have been conditioned to believe that.
Simply, you start these actions and you think, great, okay, like back at the time, they had attacked us. There had been terrorism by Libya. So of course we bombed them. Okay, great. Yes, go America. Again, put on your cheerleader uniform. They deserved it. Good for us. And now, you look at those parents of the 35 Syracuse University students, I'm sure they're not feeling so great about it. So that's just one example, Aaron, where you just don't know what you're starting. And our mutual friend, Glenn Greenwald, has been pointing out that it's very normal for the cheerleading to happen after an action like this. There's like a froth that builds up amongst the media. We love our military. We're proud of our guys for, superbly executing such a difficult and dangerous mission. Of course we are. And we're proud.
No, we're not. Like that's the thing. I don't. Who is she talking to?
Out of the United States of America for being able to do that in a way that probably no other country can. But that doesn't really answer the bigger question about how is this going to come back to haunt us, and not just us, but our kids, our children.
Yes, because it's people on the ground who have to pay the price of these decisions made from above. I mean, how many people lost their lives in Vietnam and so many other countless wars that were a disaster for everybody involved. And if you look at some of the reasons that we get, so another reason, a major one that the Trump administration claims is Maduro is a narco trafficker. I mean, Megyn, you have a legal background. I'd be curious your thoughts if you've on the indictment and the strength of it. I mean, I noticed that one of the counts that Maduro faces is possession of machine guns, which I don't understand. I mean, first of all, I don't understand why it's a big concern for the U.S. that Maduro has machine guns, and to me, it speaks to kind of this not being such a robust indictment. But he's accused of being a narco trafficker, and again, I don't think the evidence supports that. And it's also a harder case to make when Trump recently pardoned a convicted narco trafficker in the same court that indicted Maduro. And in the New York court, Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, he was found to take a bribe from a cartel, $1 million. He was caught on tape vowing to stuff the drugs up the gringos' noses, quoting him. There was a prison murder tied to his case, and Trump pardoned him. So just as he's launching a regime change campaign, in the name of fighting narco trafficking, he goes and convicts and pardons a convicted narco trafficker. So this strikes me as just yet, as we saw with Iraq, the pretext there.
Pretextual.
Yes. The pretext there was Iraq WMDs, which didn't exist. And I think we're following a very similar playbook here. At least Trump has the honesty, unlike
I don't disagree.
To say this is about oil.
I totally agree with you that it's pretextual, that it is not about narco terrorism. I'm sure Trump does object to the amount of drugs coming our way from Venezuela. But of course, if you really want to crack down on countries that are sending drugs in the United States, you'll start with China and Mexico, not necessarily Venezuela. And to your point,
but pause here just a second, right? So again, as I said, what about the drugs that are pushed by the pharmaceutical companies? Like again, nobody has officially held the Sackler family accountable till this day. Yes, they had the hearings in Congress, but Richard Sackler is not in jail. So if it's really about what's going on here and what's happening to American people right here in this country, why aren't you going after big pharma? And I think the answer to that question is that a lot of the politicians take money from big pharma. Big pharma donates a lot of money to these politicians. So I think that's a big part of the problem. And so to me, it's just, I don't know. I will say, I think it's kind of good that MEGYN did announce that she doesn't think that the rhetoric that is coming from corporate media about Venezuela is correct, and that it's not something that people should be readily cheering on. But I do also still feel like she is willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. And I just don't, like, for me, I don't want to hear anything else about drugs coming into the United States until these people are willing to tackle the drugs that are heavily pushed by big pharma, that disable people and that break people every day. So until we get to the point where people want to talk about people getting addicted to pills from big pharma, I just don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Let me pull this out here. I think Scott is here. I can come back to that at the end. Okay, Scott, are you ready? You can give me a thumbs up if you are. Okay, cool. All right, let me come out of here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my special guest, you've seen him here before, is Scott Ritter. He is a former UN Special Weapons Inspector. Let's go ahead and bring him back in. What's going on, Scott?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. A lot happened as soon as 2026 has started. I think I want to get your perspective about what is happening now in Venezuela, right? I'm seeing some similarities here to what happened to Iraq. And I know you have experience there. You know, you were a former, weapons inspector. And you remember the narrative that was told about the weapons of mass destruction, and that's why we needed to go to war, right? Now the narrative has changed, but I feel the same type of energy. There's a lot of oil there. And I want to get your take on this about what they're actually trying to do in Venezuela.
I mean, what they're trying to do is set in motion the implementation of the National Security Strategy document that was published in November of last year to create Fortress America. I mean, the Trump administration has come straight out and said that the Western Hemisphere belongs to us, America. Everything in the Western Hemisphere belongs to us. All of the resources of the Western Hemisphere belong to us. And I'm not exaggerating, straight up said it. When you have the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations in the home that's supposed to enshrine international law, we could get to that in just a second, saying that we can't allow Venezuela's oil to be in the hands of people who aren't us. That's it. Now, what sickens me is not only that my government says this, and that there are people in the mainstream media that will echo this approvingly. It's that the American people just sit back stupidly and allow this to happen. I just want to remind everybody for a second that we live in a constitutional republic. That's who we are. That's what we are. And if you don't understand that, you're not an American. Screw you. Get the hell out. Or accept the fact that we aren't the United States of America anymore. And frankly speaking, we're not. We're not the nation that we aspire to be because our stupid, ignorant population, and I'm going to say people watching this show are as ignorant as the days on, because I'm going to say some things. They're going to go, what? I didn't know that. Really? Yeah. Like the Constitution. You guys are aware of the Constitution, right? And, separate but equal branches of government, the executive, the judiciary, the legislative branch. And you do know that, for instance, when Marco Rubio gets up there and talks about the United Nations and belittles it, we don't care what the United Nations says. He says that they're stupid. When you have people like Megyn Kelly say, it's drugs coming across the border, man, we got to do this. No, I'm sorry, Megyn. No, we don't. So you're stupid, Megyn. And you're going to use this word a lot because I'm at the point where I am fed up with the American public and the ignorance of the American public about the Constitution that defines here. Oh, come on, Scott, the Constitution died a long time ago. Then get the hell out of my country. My country is a constitutional republic. I took an oath to uphold and defend that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And if you live in the United States and you don't live by that Constitution, then you're an enemy of the United States, literally an enemy, because we are all about the Constitution. The Constitution allows the President of the United States to sign treaties. The United Nations Charter is a treaty signed by a President of the United States, ratified by 2/3 of the United States Senate. Now, guess what happens when that occurs, ladies and gentlemen? It becomes the supreme law of the land. The supreme law of the land, constitutionally binding to everybody from the president on down. We are part of the United Nations system. We have signed the United Nations Charter, and the United Nations Charter absolutely forbids what President Trump just did the other day. 100%, no ifs, ands, or buts. So no matter how you want to spin it, if you want to pretend that what he did is right, you're not an American. You're not. Nobody in the Trump administration is an American. There's something else. They function differently. Nobody in Congress. Because the other thing is, if we want to, for instance, go and grab Maduro, which we did, it's against the law. And when I say against the law, it's against the Constitution of the United States of America. The president violated the Constitution. Congress has done nothing. They've abrogated their responsibilities. So now it's up to the judiciary. There's a hearing taking place in Manhattan, Southern District of New York. I call it the battle for New York because this is it, baby. This is the last chance for America to prove that it can survive as a constitutional republic. Maduro cannot be tried in an American court. It's unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. This case must be thrown out. He can't be tried. There is no jurisdiction. To accept jurisdiction means that we violate the Charter of the United Nations. We violate the Constitution. We are treaty bound not to capture heads of states of sovereign nations. That's the United Nations Charter. Congress has not enacted any legislation that modifies or otherwise changes that treaty that gives the court leverage over this. This is the end of America. This is what is happening right now. This is literally the end of the United States of America. If we allow this to go forward, we cease to function as a constitutional republic. And you know what we become? A dictatorship, literally, a dictatorship. We are a functioning dictatorship of the worst kind, because this isn't a benevolent dictatorship of a man who, appeals to common sense and all this. This is Caligula-like, narcissistic, cult of personality. This is the worst possible thing that could happen to the United States. We have literally crossed the Rubicon. We have one chance to redeem ourselves, and that is to set Maduro free on the orders of a judge who says we lack jurisdiction. The Constitution prohibits this. My God, if somebody said that, I'd give a cheer out. Void of that. And remember, this is the same judge who in 2020 authorized the indictment against him. He's the judge that oversaw the indictment. Now, you can indict a ham sandwich, and the thing about indictments is they aren't, proof of guilt, and there is due process still attached to it. So the indictment didn't give the United States authority to go and grab this guy in violation of international law and the Constitution. But this guy, we have to be a little concerned right now, because our justice system, like our legislative system, has long ago punted in favor of the executive, which is why we have a functioning dictatorship today in Washington, D.C.
So this is what I want to show people, because Maduro just appeared in court, and I want you guys to see what Maduro said. One of the things that really stand out to me is he described himself as a prisoner. Everyone listen to this.
Pleaded not guilty to federal charges related to drugs and weapons, and will be held without bail until their next court date in mid-March. During the arraignment, Maduro, dressed in prison garb, you see pictures there on the screen, appeared defiant, describing himself to the U.S. district judge as captured, innocent, and, quote, the president of my country. His wife echoed that sentiment, calling herself the, quote, first lady of the Republic of Venezuela. Those words could offer a window into a possible defense strategy here if Maduro tries to argue head of state immunity, although the U.S. doesn't recognize him as a legitimate leader. Yesterday's hearing also came to a dramatic close when a man in the courtroom stood up and screamed at Maduro in Spanish, saying he will pay for his crimes. The ousted leader responded, quote, I'm a kidnapped president. I'm a prisoner of war. And in a phone interview with
that part, he said he is a prisoner of war. And the other part that I wanted to show people that was just announced, which I think, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but in my opinion, could make all this even fall apart as well, is that it was reported just now, the Maduro case is dropping the cartel theory. I don't know if everybody saw this, but this is a really big one. It says here that the Justice Department revised its indictment of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, dropping claims that Cartel de los Soles is an actual cartel. The shift undercuts 2025 U.S. terror designations and reshapes the Maduro drug case. So now they're saying they actually had to drop the cartel theory. And so I want to get your opinion about this as well, Scott. I don't feel they have anything that can actually stick. And I think this is going to be the really telling part. Like, are they going to be able to, I haven't seen, evidence that he is trafficking drugs into the United States, but the fact that they are dropping the cartel theory, I think that says a lot.
First, again, before any, just to set the record straight, we're talking about the wrong thing if you're talking about a case that sticks. To give you an example, in the United States, there's plenty of cases where police have gone in hot pursuit across state lines and effected an arrest in a state that isn't their jurisdiction. And they arrested a guilty party. The guy had a car full of, whatever they were looking for, drugs or something like that. Case gets tossed out because it's an illegal arrest. Illegal arrest. Okay. You can't even begin to talk about the evidence that's obtained illegally. Here, so we shouldn't, what I don't want to do is just jump to talking about the case, because that obviates what I've said all along. There is no legitimacy to this whatsoever. None, zero, zip, squat. Now we can move to the evidence. You had Aaron Mate, debating Megyn Kelly earlier. His partner at the Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal, has done an outstanding job of exposing, the origins of this cartel. It's a CIA operation. I think dates back to 1989. Where the CIA recruited a Venezuelan general and then had him ship 22 tons of cocaine to the United States as part of whatever game the CIA was playing at the time. So the cartel exists only because the CIA invented it. It's not part of Venezuela. Maduro has nothing to do with it. And James Story, he's the former ambassador of the United States to not Venezuela. He was the charge of the affairs of the Caracas embassy before it closed down. And then he jumped to Colombia, where he ran the Venezuelan interest section, basically running covert operations against Venezuela in the first Trump administration. He did an interview in 60 Minutes a while ago where he said, this is nothing to do with drugs. Zero. This is all about oil, all about resources. So the whole drug case is just a fabrication from the beginning. So even if it did go to trial, one would hope that it would be thrown out. But I have to tell you this, that if this judge allows this to go to trial, it means he doesn't care about the rule of law. It means that he has been bought and paid for, and he will play the game, and they will get a Noriega type conviction. So, it doesn't, the rule of law doesn't matter when the judge doesn't care. I can tell you that for sure. We'll find out if this judge cares. Now, we know in the past he has, for instance, last year, rejected a Trump administration effort to deport Venezuelan illegal immigrants to Venezuela because they were denied due process. So he is somebody who understands constitutional procedure. And so if that's the case, like I said, I hope this case never goes to trial because there is no jurisdiction. Maduro is a prisoner of war. That's what happens when you have 200 JSOC personnel, Joint Special Operations Command personnel, fly into Caracas, guns ablaze, kill 75 people, a dozen or so civilians caught in the crossfire. They suffered 7 casualties, by the way, Delta Force, 7 guys wounded, 2 are still going through surgery, 5 have been released back to active duty. A helicopter apparently was so badly shot up that it almost didn't make it back to the ships offshore. But good pilots, and they got it back there. But this was an act of war. This wasn't a law enforcement operation. This was Delta Force going in, launching a close quarter combat assault, an extremely violent event. Anybody who has worked with them, and I have worked with them, you know what this is. It's one of the most violent things you'll ever experience. And, and Maduro, was taken prisoner because of this. He is not a criminal. He's the head of state who is seized, abducted by American commandos through an act of war. He is a prisoner of war. And the United States has no jurisdiction over this man because last time I checked, we weren't at war with them. And anybody who tried to make the case, my God, this breaks us right back to blowing up the ships. You remember blowing up the ships? Yep. We're blowing up the ships, we were told. Hegseth is on record because of this cartel. These ships are from this cartel coming in. We're blowing them up because of this cartel, the cartel that doesn't exist.
Well, see, and here's the other thing. You brought up the casualties, right? I think this is another thing that people are overlooking. This was at that point, they said the death toll was at 80. I think it has increased since then to around about 100 people that have been killed. We're talking about civilians that died as well. So it's not like, and I don't like the way that some people are framing this, and they're saying, well, the U.S. stormed in there and they just arrested Nicolas Maduro. I don't like the way that people are framing. Like, no, there was an attack. Like, people died, and I don't feel as though he was arrested. I'm telling people he was kidnapped. Like, they took this guy, you know, out of nowhere. And I think my question about that as well. I saw a video that showed that the lights turned out, and Donald Trump said we turned out the lights, and there was a guy who happened to be live streaming at that time, and he's like, whoa, all the lights just went out. Do you feel as though that's why Nicolas Maduro's like men weren't able to protect him, or do you feel like some of them may have been in on it?
Let's put it this way. The president has said a lot of things. One of the things the president talked about, which normally isn't talked about, is the fact that they did that Delta has been rehearsing at a full-scale mock-up of the facility where Maduro was abducted from, a full-scale mock-up, functioning mock-up. That means that when they come to a door, they know what the door material is, they know which way the door handle turns, they know how it opens, they know what to see when they come through. They had great intelligence. Where did they get this intelligence from? They knew where the security forces were laid out. When they took this place down, they flow through the building like water. The team just flows through seamlessly. That's the way it has to work, because if you come to a door and you think it's going to open this way and it opens this way and now you're jammed, you're dead. Now you turn out the power so that we're on night vision goggles. We operate with night vision goggles like it's daytime while everybody else is, running around. So it was murder. I mean, basically these poor security guards were sitting there unsure, firing blindly enough to wound 7 Delta Force guys, but they can't see it. Delta just flows through like water and kills them. It's methodical. It's murder. And that's what they did. We shut out the lights using cyber techniques and other specialized weapons that were dropped that achieved the same result. When we received fire from certain areas, we suppressed that fire violently. That means that it wasn't very directly targeted. We sprayed down the entire area, so any civilians that happened to be in that area died. If you were a housekeeper, if you were staff, you died. They killed everybody except Maduro and his wife. It's literal murder, because this isn't an act of war. I mean, it is an act of war, but it's not legitimate. Congress didn't authorize this. We're not at war with Venezuela. We weren't attacked by Venezuela. The drugs, Scott, the drugs. Nope. None of those drugs constitute an act of war. Literally, they don't. Anybody who understands the rule of law understands this. But see, the Trump administration is just making it up as they go along. Everything they say is an absolute lie when it comes to, legal definitions and things that are real. And what I don't get is that everybody's playing along with this. Why did the JSOC commander go along with this? I mean, why did Delta Force squadron commander, the commander of Delta Force should have said, no, we need Congress to say this is an act of war, or we need, and maybe they got this, the Attorney General to come up with some sort of legality that, they provided cover for this. But, this was murder that was committed by some of America's most highly trained warriors, people who are men of honor, who took oaths that they take seriously. But for them to do this, this isn't, the Navy SEALs that assassinated Osama bin Laden, because that was a straight up assassination mission. At least Osama bin Laden was a bad guy who, was involved in 9/11 and involved in other acts of terrorism. Maduro is the head of a state, and all this stuff about drugs, understand, you can't believe anything anymore because the U.S. government just admitted they made it all up. They made it all up. You know how much fentanyl comes out of Venezuela to American shores? None. All comes out of Colombia and Mexico. But we went after citing the fentanyl crisis. It's just stupidity. And as you mentioned earlier, I think one of the biggest drug problems we have in America is the oxy. that's produced by Big Pharma. Why doesn't Delta go in and take out the Big Pharma guys? Those are raids I'd like to see. I'd like to see Delta go in and clean up Big Pharma. That would be pretty cool. But no, we're not going to get that. We're going to go in and, kidnap sovereign leaders of sovereign states on manufactured premise because we want their oil. Let's never forget what this is about. This isn't about drugs, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about drugs, Megyn Kelly. It's about oil. And, I love her. I have a son. Oh, really, Megyn? So does the rest of America. You think you're special? You think your son's special? I know he's your son and he's special to you, but you sit there and you nod your head stupidly at a whole bunch of things to get the sons and daughters of other Americans in harm's way. You don't think about that, do you? Not at all. Everybody should have a son in this fight. Everybody should have a son in this fight. And then I'd like to see how enthusiastic they are.
Well, it's really interesting too, because I was listening to this line of bull that came from Marco Rubio, and it's very clear to me. It almost seems like this is a precursor to get to Cuba. They're talking about going into Cuba, Scott. They're talking about going into Cuba, going into Colombia,
Mexico.
Yeah, like and it's serious. And Marco Rubio, for those who are not aware, Marco Rubio has been itching to get at Cuba for a long time. And so it's just, to me, I'm like, but no one's trying to stop it either, Scott. No one, even on like the Democrat side, people are just like, meh, what are we going to do?
Well, because they bought it. Again, for everybody that's, blowing up on the Republicans and Trump, please blow up on Republicans and Trump. They earned it. But so have the Democrats. It's been a bipartisan effort, this stupidity, singling out Cuba. Venezuela has been a bipartisan nightmare for the United States. Biden is guilty. Obama's guilty. Trump's guilty. Everybody's guilty about setting up Venezuela for failure, by the way, for failure. We have not allowed Venezuela to succeed. And Cuba is a bipartisan effort. There's not going to be any voices standing up going, oh, no, don't go into Cuba. Everybody's just screaming yes, because, look, if you're a Republican or Democrat, you need the state of Florida if you want to have the White House. And the Cubans are sort of a swing vote down there in Florida. So no one has the courage to go to the Cuban American community and say, pound sand. You guys came over here because you were supporters of a dictator, a brutal dictator. And, he got overthrown by a revolution. Fidel Castro's boys overthrew him. You fled because you were corrupt mafioso types. That's who Marco Rubio's father is. These aren't good people. These aren't the salt of the earth. These are people who fled Cuba because they were affiliated with a dictator. And they want to come back and restart the good old days. But the good old days were full of, mafia crime families running Havana, organized crime, corrupt families. Everything that Hugo Chavez tried to kick out of Venezuela, by the way, when they had the Chavista revolution, this systemic corruption. But nobody in the Congress is going to stop this. And the bottom line is we're going to make a move on Cuba. We might not succeed, but what we've done is set a standard where if you're a leader, we're going to take you out. And that we can do. We can do that better than anybody, especially if you let your guard down. If you sleep in the same place for several months straight, long enough for the CIA to build a detailed mock-up of your facility so that Delta can rehearse the assault. Or remember what the SEALs did to Osama bin Laden. They rehearsed that assault over and over and over again. If I were the leader of Mexico or Colombia or any nation, I wouldn't sleep in the same place 2 nights in a row. And I'd my security at night, I'd go lights out and have all my security in VGs. And I'd study. I don't want to give away too much, but JSOC isn't what they do very well, but it's very predictable. Just ask Delta what happened to them in Baghdad when the Iraqis figured out the 2 ways Delta approaches, the X and the Y, and those who know. And once you figure out the X and the Y, suddenly commandos start dying because you're only human. And if the enemy's waiting for you and ready for you, you're going to die. And so if I were the security forces of the various people, I would do some research. I would adjust accordingly, and I would live a different lifestyle until the United States gets a different president, because we now have a president that just doesn't believe in the rule of law. He's a dictator. He does whatever he wants. It's stunning. And I look at your comments. You voted for him, Scott. You're goddamn right I did. You think I was going to vote for Kamala Harris? Are you stupid? Well, Scott, Sabby has one of the smartest groups. You're not very smart if you're bringing this topic up. All right? I voted for Donald Trump because I hoped that he would be what he claimed he wanted to be, a president of peace who was looking for better relations with Russia at a time when Joe Biden was going to have a nuclear war with Russia. You guys forget about that, don't you? That the Biden administration was ready to go to nuclear war with Russia back in December, that the CIA said there's a 51% chance of a nuclear war in December of 2024. You forgot about that? I didn't. So I voted for this orange-faced lunatic on the hope that he would prevent a nuclear war. And it turned out that I was wrong. I was very wrong. But at least I have the courage to admit that I was wrong. And at least I have the integrity to sit here today and call him out for the sins he's committed. I'm not MAGA, and I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke at you. But, y'all need to cross your T's and dot your I's before you start throwing stuff at me, all right? Because I've had a very long day of fighting this fight, and I'm geared up for war, and I'll go to war against anybody on this one because I am a defender of the Constitution. That's what I do for a living. I'm an American citizen who believes in the constitutional republic. And I'm not going to just sit here and go quietly into the good night as the modern day Caligula sits there and turns American democracy into a Roman mob.
Well, Scott, why do you think people buy into this liberation ideology that when the press says that the people of Venezuela are going to be liberated? Because we heard these same things about the people in Iraq before the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, and then after the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. We know how that turned out. The same thing with Libya. We know how that turned out. Why do you think people are somewhat buying into this? And I don't know if you've been on X recently, but I also noticed there were a number of fake videos that were going around on X, and they said, look at the people celebrating in Venezuela, and it wasn't even Venezuela, or it was like a World Cup celebration from years ago. I feel like there's definitely a narrative that they're even trying to get these social media influencers to push as well. Of course, not just corporate media. But why do people buy into this whole idea that the people will be liberated?
Now we have to get into individual psychology and group psychology. Look, there are, first of all, again, just to set the record straight, the American people, maybe your audience excluded, are the most ignorant people in the world today about the world we live in. Now, if anybody in your audience wants to take me on about Iraq, and let's go through the demographics of Iraq, the different tribal cultures of Iraq, the religion, the ethnicity of Iraq, if you can pretend you have even a fraction of the knowledge I have about Iraq, then we can talk about liberation theology when it comes to Iraq. But you don't know anything about Iraq, and neither does the vast majority of the American people. And yet they will sit there and celebrate the liberation of Iraq as if the Iraqi people want to be liberated by us, that this is a good thing. You know who knows a lot about Venezuela? Anya Parampil, the wife of Max Blumenthal. I would listen to her all day about Venezuela because she's been there, she's done that, she's got the T-shirt. She will tell you straight up that the Venezuelan people are bending over backwards to be liberated by the United States. Are there problems in Venezuela, just like there were problems in Iraq? Of course there are. But America is not the solution. This is the hubris of the American people, to believe that we are the shining city on the hill. We are the only example of that which works, and everybody wants to be like us. Have you looked at American cities lately? Have you looked at the Walking Dead in American cities? These drugged out people just standing there. Have you looked at the unemployment? Have you looked at the destruction of our infrastructure? We're not a shining city on the hill. We're a swamp. We're literally, where the sewage goes in many places. why do we believe if we can't fix what we have here at home, if we can't make this right, where do we get off saying, oh, no, they want to be liberated. They want to have a better life. Who are we to tell them what a better life is? This is the arrogance. I mean, in the British days, they call it the white man's burden, racism personified, where, it was the white man's job to teach the little brown men and the little black men and the little yellow men, how to live their lives in accordance with the way that God and the Queen and the King wanted them to. Well, America's taken on that. We are an extraordinarily egotistical society who believes that somehow we have it better than everybody else and that our system is the best system in the world and everybody wants to be like us. Why don't we just respect the fact that people want to live their lives unencumbered by the weight of American oppression? Because American liberation isn't what it's all made out to be, ladies and gentlemen. We blow a lot of stuff up. We kill a lot of people. We don't liberate very much. We just destroy.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I just see a lot of repetition. I see that people are, and I've been posting these pictures as well of the comparison between Iraq and Venezuela. And the thing about the Trump administration is that he's very overt about what they want. Like he put it out there in the open and said, we want the oil. Like Biden wanted the oil too. He just didn't say it like that. You know what I mean? So it's out there in the open. And so then there is that question again, like to go and take another country's oil. And how long is the U.S. going to continue doing this? And this is another thing, like the oil thing. If you go back to Iraq, if you go back to Kuwait, a lot of this all comes back to oil. And it makes me wonder if we're at some point in this country, we really need to be looking at other sources of energy. Like, why are we still so dependent on oil in 2026?
Well, it's the easiest resource in the world to get a hold of. We'll be dependent upon oil because oil will last forever. I mean, there was talk a while ago about peak oil, but peak oil doesn't exist. Peak oil was based upon, oil that operates in wells that were accessible by available technology. But what we're finding out is that there's virtually unlimited supplies of oil through fracking and deep drilling and all this effective oil field management. There's ways to go back in. We'll be pumping oil out of the earth forever. In your lifetime, your children's lifetime, as long as there's a planet, we'll be pumping oil. And it's just, it's too easy to get. And until we have viable alternative sources of energy, green energy, et cetera, that can function on the scale of oil. And the other thing people need to remember is that oil isn't just about energy. Oil is about everything. Look around you. Everything in your house is made from oil. Everything. That's just the reality of oil. It's not just about, gas, diesel, and bunker fuel. Oil produces plastics. Oil produces food. Oil produces everything. And we need it as a society. As long as we, have this society that we aspire to be part of, we need oil. That's just the reality of it. And then the other problem is, we do this need with the fact that oil is big business. I mean, it's business on a scale that most people just can't even begin to comprehend, the amount of money that is involved in the oil industry. And it's so much money that it influences governments. And I still am on the board of advisors for a very major energy related business. And once or twice a year, all the oil executives get together. And when I say oil executives, I mean all the oil executives, the big ones, all the big multinationals, they get together and they call it oil and gas. They get together and talk about oil and gas. And I remember in some of the, behind the scenes conversations where I would try to talk about international, this is back during Iraq, and talk about, how the Iraqi people weren't going to go along with this. Oil executives were dismissive. They said, we'll just buy our way out. We buy our way out of everything. once we start throwing money around, nothing can stand in our way. And I said, well, one day you're going to run into a problem set that money can't solve. And of course, that was Iraq and Libya, where you run into people who are fighting for ideas, not just for money. But in Venezuela, we honestly believe that, look at Trump. He's just sitting there saying, hey, look, I can free up 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, get it sold and get it distributed around Venezuela. I can make life better for people. And what he's finding is the Venezuelan government and people are saying, we're not interested in doing your oil deal. It's not your oil, by the way, it's ours. Trump's acting like it's already is, if he can allocate it. The other thing we need to say about Venezuela is the people who think that this is going to be a quick fix, they don't understand oil. Venezuela used to produce oil at a rate of 3 million barrels a day. A significant amount of oil. There's a lot of oil in the ground in Venezuela, but it's not been tapped into, right? If you're going to be bringing oil out in significant numbers, volumes in Venezuela, you're going to need to do a lot of oil field development. Then that takes a lot of time. We're talking under normal circumstances to, because some of these oil wells have been shut down and not properly. As soon as you sanction this, Venezuela can't pump out oil on volumes that, because they don't have a market for it. So they have to close down oil wells. And if you don't shut down an oil well right and you mismanage the pressures, you'll get water saturation, water infiltration. You'll get a whole bunch of bad things happening that have to be fixed now. It takes time. It costs money. You're not going to make Venezuela, profitable for American oil companies for 10 years. 10 years. And a lot of money is going to have to be pumped in. Now, Donald Trump's talking about subsidizing the, the development, which means the American taxpayer, yay, us again. We're going to pay so that Chevron can go in and develop Venezuelan oil fields for the benefit of Chevron. We, the American taxpayer, are going to pay so Chevron can develop oil fields in Venezuela. The American people need to wake up to what's going on here. This is highway robbery across the board, not just robbery of the Venezuelan people, but robbery of the American people to benefit this orange-faced Caligula that we have, sitting in the White House today, this narcissistic dictator.
Yeah, this is why I kept trying to explain to people as well that this is not going to be good for us. It's not even just about the people in Venezuela. It's not going to be good for us here either. And, Trump just has people believe in this, that, this is America first and this is going to benefit the American, but it's not. And people will see over time that they have been conned once again. And I have another question. Where is Tulsi Gabbard, Scott? Where's Miss? Where is Miss? We cannot have any more regime change wars. Well, where is she? She is very quiet.
Well, the one thing, first of all, it's a great question. And it's one that everybody asks, including especially people like myself who have interacted with Tulsi in the past. First thing we have to understand is that she is a public servant. She's the director of national intelligence. It's not her job to speak to the American public. It's just not her job. It's not in her job description. She reports to the executive branch, and as required, will report to Congress. But, it's not Tulsi's job to come out and brief us, the American people. Two, she's not a policy maker. She doesn't make policy. Her job is to manage the intelligence community who are supposed to be answering the questions of the policymakers. So maybe Tulsi's doing her job. Maybe Tulsi's producing the products that are designed to inform the executive. But as we've already seen, Donald Trump, if you remember when Tulsi talked about the Iranian nuclear program, I don't believe her. Nah, she's not good. She's not smart. Nah, I'll go with John Radcliffe because he's a stooge and he's the director of the CIA. He's got paramilitary forces. We go around and kill people. Tulsi, she only Tulsi could defend Tulsi. At some point in time, one would believe that if you're best advice is being absolutely disregarded, that you're not having an impact on the system, a positive impact, then maybe it's time for you to go. But we don't know. We don't know. Has she won some battles? Has she, succeeded in certain areas? Maybe she's doing something with arms control that we're not aware of. Maybe she's doing something with China policy we're not aware of that's moving us in a direction to avoid conflict. And so from the big picture, maybe it's best to have Tulsi Gabbard stay where she is, because, the Tulsi that we all knew and love is a woman of integrity, of honor, of principle. It's got to be frustrating for her to, provide advice to an executive and have that advice ignored. But I have to believe that Tulsi isn't doing what James Clapper and others did in the lead up to the Gulf War. I mean, James Clapper admitted that he was told to find weapons of mass destruction, so they just made it up. They went out there and just made it up to answer the president. Look, here's a facility. It's weapons. He said, we didn't have the evidence. We just said it was to appease the president. I don't think she's doing that. I think she's doing the opposite, saying the truth, and the president's just ignoring her because that's what he does for a living. But, where is Tulsi? Let's just remember, she's the director of national intelligence. She has no obligation to report to the American people, none whatsoever.
One more for you here. Vladimir Putin. There was a recent article just came out today that says that Vladimir Putin says he is supporting Venezuela. What do you think that means in the grand scheme of things?
Well, we have to be realistic about what support means. Russia is a long way from Venezuela. And to get to Venezuela, Russia would have to project power using fleets and air transport that they don't have. They don't have it in the quantities that we have. They can't project a power like we do. So you have to be realistic. There are limits to Russian power. But what we're seeing right now is that Trump, I think, believed that by seizing Maduro and the CIA buying people out, because I think the CIA bought a lot of people out. That's one of the reasons why this attack went down the way it did. That, Trump thought that Venezuela would be folding already and doing his bidding. It's turning out that the Bolivarian revolution is alive and well and living in Venezuela today. And you saw after the vice president was sworn in as president, she was greeted by the three ambassadors of China, Russia, and Iran. These are the three powers the United States say they want to kick out of Venezuela. As long as the Venezuelan government is willing and able to defend itself, Russia will stand with it. Russia has some capabilities. But again, Russia has to be realistic. You don't want to deploy 5,000 Russian soldiers to Venezuela when you're going to be confronting hundreds of thousands of American troops. That's a losing proposition. You're just not going to win. But you can advise and you can support Venezuela diplomatically and legally. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. Anybody who expects Russia to deploy, the 76th Airborne Division to Caracas, I'd be surprised if that happened. Are military advisors in Venezuela? Yes. Could there be more military advisors sent in? Yes. But I think the big support comes diplomatically, legally, politically. That you're going to see Russia and China putting a lot of pressure on the United States now on the international front. China is going to be overwhelming the Americans in various international courts. Now, when you're a lawless nation, so be it. But I think you're going to see Russia and China starting to tie the United States up in the bureaucracy of international law, and make life harder for the United States. And the other thing is, if the United States can't be trusted as a partner, then things like the Arctic development, this Kirill Dmitriev, Steve Witkoff fantasy, the brotherhood of development. It's just a fantasy. And maybe the Russians start saying, Steve Witkoff's not welcome to come back here. We don't want to take another phone call from Donald Trump. And on Ukraine, as they said today, you put people on the ground in Ukraine, we're going to kill them. Russia is going to resolve Ukraine the way Russia wants to resolve it because they're tired of dealing with the United States. And I think this is what Russia means, that they'll be backing Venezuela that way. But anybody who believes that this is about Russia sending significant quantities of troops or, destabilizing technology to, the Oreshnik, it's not going to Venezuela, and neither is the Onyx. But I think Russia will back Venezuela up, with the full weight of its diplomatic. And remember, Russia is very influential in the world today with BRICS and the influence it has in Africa and the global South. Russian diplomacy can go a long ways, a lot further than most people think.
One more for you, Scott. This is a good question. Scott, doesn't Russia back Cuba from fly away forever?
They do. I mean, Russia has military forces in Cuba. Russia uses Cuban naval installations. Russia uses Cuba to spy on the United States. But again, you have to be realistic. How do you can't put a large force of Russians into Cuba, and Russia's not going to put nuclear weapons into Cuba anymore. We already tried that once. You just have to be realistic. I think Russia has enough influence in Cuba, and Cuba has enough inherent strength that they can withstand. They can make it impossible for the United States to launch a conventional assault. There will be no invasion of Cuba. But the danger is that because of sanctions, the United States has been very successful. We saw this in Venezuela. You sanction Venezuela, you bring harm not to the people of Venezuela, because Americans don't care about the people of Venezuela. That's just the reality of it. Oh, we care about them. We're liberating them. No, the sanctions were designed to hurt the political and economic elite. And what you do is you get them to feel pain, and then you dangle the possibility of lifting sanctions. We can lift sanctions and get all that money flowing back to you. All those people are used to your big bank accounts and your chartered jets and your jet set lifestyle. You can have that again. All we have to do is lift the sanctions. But first, you got to get rid of Maduro. You see, that's how we operate. And now in Cuba, we're saying the same thing. First, we got to get rid of the commies. Get rid of the commies, and we can bring it all back. And there's enough people in Cuba that buy into this nonsense, who say, yes, this is what we want. Hell, there's people in Russia that buy into this. This is the danger of sanctions. We've sanctioned Russia, and yet Vladimir Putin empowered Kirill Dmitriev to talk with Steve Witkoff about how do we get to the lifting of sanctions. And the moment you start talking about the lifting of sanctions, while sanctions are still in play, all you're doing is creating false hope, a false promise. People start spending their money before they have it, and they get disappointed when things don't happen. Like when Putin says, I'm not going to, cave in on our demands. And then Trump says, I'm disappointed in Putin. And the people in Russia go, it's Putin's fault that sanctions aren't lifted. And now you have internal unrest potentially developing in Russia. So this is the game that's going to be played. Again, I don't think we're invading Cuba, but I do think you're going to see the United States use sanctions-based leverage to try to develop an opposition in Cuba that we can then exploit for a variety of purposes.
Scott Ritter, thank you, Scott, so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All righty, bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Scott Ritter. I am going to pivot and finish we're almost done with the Megyn Kelly Aramate story. So I'm going to go back to pivot to that to finish that, and then we'll dive into call-in. So let's go ahead and add this back here.
He just pardoned this other guy who was obviously a party to that too. I agree that it's pretextual. It is about regime change. And I think he was being honest, though, when he said it's the Don Road Doctrine. That I believe. And if you look at that, I haven't spent a lot of time studying the Monroe Doctrine, I'm going to be honest, from our fifth president, that basically said, not in our hemisphere. Not in our hemisphere. You're not going to, at the time it was Europe, you're not going to come and colonize anything in the Western hemisphere, period. And we'll fight you if you do. And we did. We enforced that over years. And I was just kind of researching this morning, what was the constitutional authority for that? Like there wasn't really any. We kind of just made it up and said, we're just not going to allow it. And we've been doing it for 200 years now and getting away with it. And so I kind of understand his decision that forget the narco terrorism stuff. He had to use that as a pretext to get around congressional approval and all the other, legal requirements that would be there if this were actually declared a war or a military invasion or incursion of some sort. I think it really is Trump saying not in our hemisphere. I've seen that Cuba's basically infiltrated Venezuela entirely. The relationship between those two has been totally interdependent, and they don't like Cuba, especially Marco Rubio. And China was there when we captured Maduro. They were getting closer and closer thanks to China's Belt and Road policy, where they're trying to inculcate themselves into various nations all over the world, including in South America, to make them less dependent on the United States and more dependent on China. And where that goes, we don't like. We don't know, but we know we don't like. And Russia too, with the oil. So I think that was the honest answer. We don't like it. Because one of the reporters said to Trump, Aaron, what about the oil? Like, why the oil? And he said, why don't you ask Russia that? Why don't you ask China that? They're the ones who are focused on the Venezuela oil. And I do believe that's his actual reason, which I guess I share in that concern of Trump's, that them getting a big foothold in Venezuela, the Chinese, the Russians, and Cuba, it's not a great thing for the United States of America.
Well, listen, I don't share that view, but regardless of what you think about Venezuela's choice of allies, I think the question for the U.S. government is, if you are imposing policies that are designed to destabilize a foreign government, which I would argue has been the focus of U.S. policy in Venezuela for more than 2 decades, starting with the coup I mentioned earlier, the coup attempt against Hugo Chavez, what do you expect a country to do? If you support the overthrow of a government, they're not going to be too enthusiastic about working with you, and they're going to choose other allies. And that's what I think happened in Venezuela. I think if the U.S. hadn't been trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government for more than 2 decades, I don't think they'd be as keen to embrace allies like Russia and China. Maybe they would be, but certainly if you are if you were supporting the overthrow of a foreign government, which what the Bush administration did under Hugo Chavez, and that's continued, again, under both parties. Under Obama declared Venezuela to be a national security threat to the U.S., which had the impact of deterring investment in Venezuela. Because that's what, if the most powerful country in the world says that you're a threat, banks are not going to want to do business with you. And so all these actions have isolated Venezuela. And to the extent that they would be willing to cooperate with the U.S., they haven't been so keen about that, given the efforts at regime change there. Now, I personally think that states have the right to make the alliances that they want, but we don't have to agree on that. I think when you have decades of policy aimed at regime change, and the U.S. has spent a lot of money via agencies that Trump has actually criticized, via groups like the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID, supporting the opposition in Venezuela. And so when you have a country doing that, I can understand why in Venezuela's case, they went and sought other friends.
So I want to say this to all of you guys. I thought Aaron brought up really good points there, but I want to say this. We need to pay attention to what happens in Venezuela while Maduro is here in the United States, because if there was a time for these groups to rise and say that they are anti-Maduro, they're against him in Venezuela, it would be easier for them to do that now because he's not there. You get what I'm saying? So if we go back again to Iraq and we remember Saddam Hussein, the U.S. overthrew Saddam Hussein, and that gave rise to ISIS. That's how ISIS was able to come into, rise up the way that it did, because he wasn't there to keep that in check. And so I'm going to pay attention. And if I start to hear, news about, oh, look at these, there's gangs rising up in Venezuela, or, oh my God, there's radical Islamists rising up in Venezuela. I think people need to know that these are probably groups that are funded by the US or the CIA. And they'll use that for reasoning as well. Well, we got to get out of there. And well, we got to do this because we got to go fight these people now. And so sometimes the United States has been known to pay for these groups to exist. ISIS is another example, right? So pay attention to what happens in Venezuela while Maduro is here in the United States. Someone mentioned it in the chat as well. The color revolutions. Pay attention to things like that because he's not there. So he's not watching or able to keep those things in check. And then we also, again, we just got to go back to the Isaac Accords again. At the end of the day, don't forget about this. The Isaac Accords, which is a new initiative aimed at strengthening political, economic, and cultural cooperation between Israel and Latin America. That is a big one that people cannot forget about, right? So they want that to also happen. I think that MEGYN, for whatever reason, I think she has a more difficult time criticizing Donald Trump. I feel like, like she may say, like I wonder about this action he just did in Venezuela, but she never goes all the way in, and says this, you are wrong for this. This isn't right. I can't support this. Right. So it makes you wonder what type of relationships that she's trying to keep. So that's something to think about. That's why I was very surprised when I saw that Aaron was on her show. But hopefully he was able to educate her viewers. So yeah, it's just playing in our faces, guys. Just been playing in our faces. We are going to do call in tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a quick break and Eric's going to read the super chats. Oh, the poll. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for the reminder. Let's do that. I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking. All right. Thank you guys for participating in the poll. Maduro case just dropped the cartel theory. Do you believe Maduro will walk? 27% said yes, he will walk. 28% said yes, but he will make a deal. 14% said no, he's going to jail. And 31% said not sure yet. 2,588 votes. Interesting. The first two are very close, 27% to 28%. That's pretty close, guys. So thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. Eric's going to read the super chats. I'll be back.
I'm in the minority. I'm in the minority. I actually think they'll get him in jail one way or another, like they did with Noriega. I think once you're in those clutches, they'll make it happen. But hopefully I'm wrong. But there you go.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see.
We can talk about it in call in.
All right, I'll be back, guys.
All right. So this is a little transitional part of our Sabby Sab show. Let me adjust a little view here. There we go. So we give Sabrina a little break, and then she's actually creating the call-in rooms on Zoom. We used to have an app called Call-In, which was pretty cool, but it got, I don't know, deleted, discontinued, and so now we do it on Zoom, which works pretty well. We still kind of call it Call-In. But anyways, that's where you if you want to tell us what you think, you can come in and say your spiel. Whether or not you have the camera on or off is optional. And either way is good. But yeah, we have some good conversations over there. Hopefully, I do want to encourage people over there to try to have it be more conversational, to try to like ask each other questions and try to have a back and forth, which would be cool to the extent that we could do that. But anyways, it'll be good stuff one way or the other. So we'll be giving you the link to that shortly. In the meanwhile, I'll jump into some super chats here in a second. One thing that struck me during the Scott Ritter interview was there was the talk about oil, and I do think it can be a mistake to focus too much on the particular tool. Like oil is kind of a tool to technology, and I would posit that it's not so much whether or not we do oil or not oil, or whether we do a lot less oil or more oil in what we produce and extract and so forth. But I would say what's more important is who is the oil in the technology benefiting, right? I would submit the big problem right now is that basically everything that happens in our economy happens for a billionaire, right? If it enriches a billionaire, then it happens. And if it doesn't enrich a billionaire, then it doesn't happen. And we really need to do a systemic fix of how our society, how the system operates. and it always comes back to government, because government calls the shots and controls these things, really. And as long as we have this implacably corrupt government, oil is going to be used terribly and overused and not cleaned up and not really moved over in terms of alternatives. But conversely, if we did manage to rise up as a 99% and peacefully but forcibly change our government and decorrupt it to work for the 99%, then all kinds of things are possible. And we could see a world where oil is used less and is used cleanly, and alternative fuels are leveraged, and the whole system is leveraged to work for the 99%, not just the billionaires. But it's going to take, a mass movement with clear demands, with a strong focus on corruption. That's kind of the mission statement. Check that out at 11demands.org if that sounds interesting and you want to see more details. Meanwhile, super chats. We got a few queued up here that also go back to a couple of stories earlier. Let's see what we got here in the queue. Thank you, Roger Meadows, who is clarifying that it was a joke. Jesus, people, he knew it wasn't Yang. All right, Roger. And thanks for the super sticker, Aaron Toon. Appreciate that. And thanks for this very generous super chat from Mrs. Ruby 2264, who says, "You are the best, Sabby. Thanks for being consistent. And thanks to you. Appreciate you." And thanks for this super chat from Focus, who says, "In case you guys didn't know, the Daily Wire will work with Democrats to cancel anyone against Israel. They did it to Nick and Candace." And also thanks. Oh, that was that one. All right. And thanks for the super sticker, Clarissa. Appreciate you. And appreciate and shout out to Miranda Rios for being a member for 11 months. We like our longtime members, and she used her special longtime member chat to say, "Hi, Sabby, love your channel. I'm always learning something new." Appreciate that. And we got this one from Mr. Roger Meadows, who says, "How it feel to get treated like an NG candy while you were having a good time repeating anti-black rhetoric like black men are the most violent, wearing White Lives Matter t-shirt. We warned you. Devil came for his due." I hear you, Roger. And thanks for this one, Fly Away Forever, who says, "Prep H wants BS for a commercial." And thanks for this also very generous super chat from Focus 6016, who says, "Communists need to start reading Marx, specifically an essay he wrote in 1840 something on a specific group of capitalists." And thanks also for this one, Roger. So Roger was reacting to Scott Ritter coming in kind of hot there on the audience, and Roger saying, "Sab's audience is the most informed audience you'll ever speak to, so I don't know who you're calling ignorant and stupid like that. Take it somewhere else, Scott." All right, Mr. Roger defending us all. There you go. And thanks for this one, Gamble. "Dr. Tony Martin, deceased and former Wellesley College professor, outlined the troll strategy Candace spoke of in a book called The Jewish Onslaught." All right. And shout out to All My Days for this one, saying, "Seth Harp, the Fort Bragg cartel, Delta Force equals cartel." All right. And thanks for the super chat, Wasim. "If the USA can kidnap Maduro, then anyone can capture Bibi while he is still PM and send to ICC." Yeah, well, I mean, I guess anyone with as big of an army and an arsenal as the US has. So unfortunately, that's a club of one, and unless Russia and China really get together. But that could get hot though. All right, thanks for the super chat. Bill Lackey, who says, "Hey Scott, respect your work and integrity, but a vote for either party in a duopoly was stupid. Next time you will know." Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people noted in the chat that a lot of us voted for Jill Stein, and we don't have to regret that vote at this point. And if one of the things that occurs to me sometimes is that if everyone who felt this way had voted for Jill Stein, maybe we'd be in a very different situation right now. And thanks for this one, Focus. This is why I love Sabby. You literally get viewpoints and ideas from across the spectrum. You literally cannot find anything else like it on YouTube. Appreciate that. We got some appreciative fans.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. You want to pick up the last couple?
Sure. Thank you, Velma. This is why I love thank you, Sabby. Sorry if we're asking the right questions. We need voices like you to keep the world enlightened with facts. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Oh, thank you so much, Velma. That's really sweet. Let's see where we are here. Velma? Who's after Velma? Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you, K9. Is the petrodollar in any way a part of the Constitution of the United States or the Bill of Rights? Hell no. Soldiers these days just keep speaking of pay grade. I guess they're all just effed working at Walmart. Yeah, it's a good point there, the petrodollar. And thank you for the super sticker, Ruffin. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. Many of you have been asking, the next mutual aid workshop I'm going to host will be January 24th. That Saturday at 11 a.m. I will share the graphic for that, the next live stream. So hope to see you guys there as well, because mutual aid is the way that we're going to help each other. It's one of the ways that we can help each other. So we are going to go ahead and jump right into call in. So let me go ahead and open up the call in room.
Open the door.
Open the door.
Open the door. Let us in.
All right. And that link is pinned at the top of the live chat. I see people are already entering the room. I just ask that when you enter, if you can mute yourself, please. And if you want to speak, the way that it works, it's basically just Zoom. At the bottom of the screen, there's an option to raise your hand. And that's how I know that you want to speak. So bottom of the screen, you'll see a little icon here that says raise your hand. And that lets me know to call on you. And if you come in a little bit later in the show, if you go to sabrinasalvati.com, you'll also be able to get that Zoom link as well to join the call in segment. So hope to see you guys
set me
there.
up as co-host?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And
all right. And I will see you all in there.
All right, guys. Okay, let's head on over to call in. And thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.